Uh, We're back. Hey, everybody. Let's go ahead and come on back. Before we move on, excuse me. Before we move on, any questions with the things that we've covered, digestive or endocrine? Let's go ahead and cover those before we jump into the next piece.
Again, just questions related to digestion or endocrine.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary Ann.
Hey, Marianne.
I missed what you gave oils on cholesterol, and I missed the oil.
Rosemary, verbena, and cypress combined.
Rosemary, verbatim, and cypress combined.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I may have missed this. You may have already stated this, what I'm trying to say. Did you address postmenopause?
Yeah, we did a little bit. You still would use Vitex, but depending on some of the symptoms, are you having, or whoever you're treating, are they having specific symptoms, or what's going on?
No specific symptoms, but you know, there aren't any good medical drugs for that without
Right.
Cancer, danger, things like that. So I was just wondering if there was anything that you were recommending for oils, and I apologize if you already said it.
It's okay. Vitex is the big one that's the go-to. And then depending on what symptoms are manifesting, you can treat that after the fact. But Vitex, Vitex has some hormone mimicking components that are specific to women's hormones, and actually can even be used to treat some male conditions, but mostly it's used to treat female conditions. So that could be premenopausal, in the middle of menopause, and then postmenopausal. You can always increase the dosage, but sometimes we go through and like whatever symptoms start to pop up, we then go through and treat. But the Vitex is the primary treatment. Yeah.
Good.
And my experience is Vitex works exceptionally well through all aspects of menopause.
Okay. I think I'd like to start with that and then maybe address, is it possible, since it's such a personal subject, to address it through an email?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's Vitex is, I heard you talking a little bit about that, to apply it
In the temple.
topically.
Yeah, like
In the
just
temple.
a couple drops on the temples. And
Okay.
like if you're feeling that like a drop or two isn't getting it, you could bump it up to 3 or 4 drops. But yeah, I probably not more than 3 or 4 drops. Nothing bad happens if you were to do 15, but it's
Well,
just it's better to be consistent with Vitex rather than like a big dosage at a particular time.
okay, great. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Anybody else?
What was the ratio for the cypress and
Oh,
rosemary?
good
verbena?
question. I want to say it's 2 to 1, but let me look it up and I'll tell you exactly. Two parts rosemary verbenan, 1 part cypress. And remember, like if cholesterol is a real big issue, you can always augment by, you would still use that, a couple drops in water taken internally. You would still augment that with the digestive lymph oil, which is carrot and rosemary camphor applied topically. And that also has been proven through medical testing to reduce cholesterol as well. Not really a primary, you use that more as secondary, the primary being the cholesterol support. Occasionally, sometimes we have to substitute, instead of cypress, we use Spanish sage, usually more in women than in men. But if we do need to do that, I usually just make that and we send it to the person. And so if you feel that the primary blend is not working as well as it could, we can make you the different one and send it to you.
Is there a specific marjoram oil that can be taken internally? I have marjoram supreme and I'm curious if it can be ingested.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And just so you guys, any of the marjorams on the website can be
Yeah.
ingested.
Yeah, any of them can be adjusted. Yeah. The Corsican is a little bit stronger and has a little bit more refined scent. And then there's regular marjoram, and then the Spanish marjoram is a little bit different. Spanish marjoram I use for certain things, and then also use Spanish marjoram on children, like instead of just the regular marjoram. So.
Only because you've mentioned both of these oils today,
Mhm.
maybe not specifically with digestion, but what's the difference between stress ease and de-stress?
Stress ease is more the stress response itself. De-stress is actually tied to toxic levels of stress. So, clinically, you would go through and you would look at stress on different levels. First is the stress response, and then there's stress, and then there is stress that affects like your like your psychology, like your emotions in your mind, and then toxic levels of stress. Basically, the term toxic stress means that stress has reached such a state that it is causing physiological issues, like it is actually causing health-related issues. And so that's what the de-stress was made for, is to really unwind the levels of stress that are in the body that could cause physiological issues.
Greg mentioned finger point blend. It's not for trigger finger. What is it for? I don't remember.
What is it?
They said it, you mentioned finger point blend. Go ahead.
I think she's confusing it with trigger point blend.
What
Maybe.
was it?
Yeah, I think that's probably.
Me, Zakia, and I thought I had, I just didn't remember that you differentiated one with the other.
I'm not even sure what
It's trigger point blend.
Yeah, I was asking you about the
versus
trigger
the
finger.
Trigger finger.
Trigger point blend's not for trigger finger.
Right, what's it for?
It's for trigger points.
And what's that?
Trigger points are things that happen in muscles that are beyond like a cramp or a spasm that actually cause neurological dysfunction. They're very specific in each muscle, and they cause a referred pain pattern and cause neurological disturbances in the body. So it's much more severe than like a cramp, a knot, tight muscle, things of that nature. And they're tied to stress levels and trauma levels in the limbic system.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So I have a question about that oil. Can it be an emotional trigger, not just a physical?
No, it's for physical trigger points. Like the term trigger is the proper term is myofascial trigger points. So it just doesn't mean any sort of trigger. It's actually very specific. It's actually the way they refer to it medically. So it's not just about an emotional trigger or anything like that. It's actually about a certain phenomenon that happens in the body. Yeah. Emotional triggers, you can use a couple of different things. One, putting mugwort on the joints of the arms and legs, because part of being emotionally triggered is tied to automatic behavior, automatic thinking, and by opening up the arms and legs, which are extensions of the basic chakra, allows for the energy to move and flow. And so it reduces the tendency to get triggered. And so that can be a very good first step. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Letty.
Hey, Letty.
Hi guys, how are you doing? Greg, the other day you mentioned when we're talking about trigger points,
Mhm.
I think it was for Megan. You mentioned on working on a trigger point with pH. What were the colors again? Or does it depend on the area? Like do you use
No, you can use green and then electric violet.
green and then electric violet?
Mhm.
What's the application for trigger point?
You would be treating trigger point issues in the body, and you also would use it to put the body in a state that, like for some sleep mechanisms, but it's like when you're treating trigger points. So,
I think they're wondering, do you take it topically?
oh, it's topical. I'm sorry. Yes, topical.
On the area.
Yes, on the area.
I know Greg mentioned time to ease fatigue associated with COVID. Is there an oil to help with congestion brought on by COVID? I'm still experiencing some congestion.
Nasal or in the chest?
Both.
And in the chest, is it wet, or is it just feel like there's like sticky stuff in your lungs that you're trying to cough out?
Sticky stuff in the lungs.
Okay, so if it was wet, I would probably go the route of terebinth, like inhaling terebinth for the lung stuff. That it feels like sticky stuff that you're trying to get out. Part of it is you need to moisten it and like loosen it up a little bit. I mean, the best mucolytic there is in essential oils is Anula, right? Anula, and that you would just inhale long, slow, deep breath, and it breaks down mucus and reduces it. You can always go to things like eucalyptus and myrtle and things like that. That can be helpful, but when the mucus feels like kind of thick and sticky, One of the things I like to do is to liquefy things a little bit to make it easier for you to expel it out. So the idea would be to use something like thyme or pepper, some form of pepper, and take long, slow, deep breaths. And basically you're increasing circulation in the lung tissue and then helping to loosen that up and then expel that out. You might need to follow it after a few days with like eucalyptus, something that's expectorant, eucalyptus or hyssop. Like hyssop would be really good to follow up that with. But breaking up the mucus, thyme and black pepper, and anula being the best mucolytic. So there's that component. In the sinuses, again, anula would be very good. Rosemary could be good. Basil, exceptionally good for mucus up in the sinuses. The thyme can be good. Eucalyptuses can be good for up there. I'd probably lean a little bit more to like radiata versus, globulus. Just because it's softer. Sometimes globulus can be a little too strong in the nose. And if we go to respiratory, let me see here.
Because they are wondering, would these oils mentioned also help with the shortness of breath?
Shortness of breath, I'd go to a hyssop. Yeah, hyssop. Either hyssop decumbens. You might get away with using larch, so larch or hyssop, but yeah. So see, like even with that, there's multiple issues that you're addressing. Mucus in the sinuses, mucus in the lungs, and mucus in the lungs doesn't necessarily translate into shortness of breath. But shortness of breath definitely can be post-COVID. Hyssop or larch are usually what we use for that. Every once in a while, I did use helichrysum for that. But I would say that's a case-by-case basis. Like it's not like across the board, that's what's going to work. So. Okay, so on that note, this kind of ties into a little bit what we're going to talk about. We started to talk about it the other night in the study group about paradoxical breathing, going back to if we were to go through and look at, talking about trigger points in the neck in the scalenes muscle. There's actually a series of muscles on each side. There are these little finger-like muscles that go from the vertebrae in your neck and then go down to like the ribs and things. And when they tighten up, they put pressure on the brachial plexus, which is a bundle of nerves that goes down into your arms and hands. And so this causes breathing issues. It causes a thing called paradoxical breathing. And it can cause dysfunction down into the arms and hands, causing numbness and tingling down into the hands. And so one of the key tests for if the scalene trigger points are activated is you take your hand like so, and you bend and see how I can touch my fingers to the area above my palm. Like I'm not touching it down here. I bend them back and I can touch all the way to the top, right? Now, if you have activated trigger points in your scalenes, you'd go like this, like you would not be able to touch the top of your hand. And that's because the nerve is being compressed in your neck. And so by the time it gets down to your fingers, you can't finish that movement, right? So here is what's appropriate. If you're doing this, then you do have an issue in your neck. Now, if it's all but one, where you go like this, it's the middle finger. If you do that, it's actually something in your forearm. That's something different. Okay, so you're either here or here. And even if you're not testing positive for trigger points in the neck, and remember, trigger points are a specific part of the muscle that causes neurological dysfunction. You know, it causes referred pain patterns, which means the pain is not in the location of the muscle. It's referred down the arm or referred to another part of the body. And then it causes neurological dysfunction. It causes physiological responses that then start to put the body into a chaotic state. Like, for example, if you have trigger point issues in the psoas, it can cause issues with the menstrual cycle. For men, it can cause issues with the testicles, pain in the testicles, and ejaculation issues. It can cause kind of a pseudo appendix type pain. It throws off digestion. It radiates pain down in the legs. It can throw off your gait a little bit, like how you walk. That muscle actually begins to act like a prankster. Causes all kinds of weird digestive issues. I've had it cause people to have diarrhea, urinary issues, and it's all the hip flexors, right? So here we want to address the scalenes. This is actually a very common type of trigger point. And so again, like any time you have tension in the diaphragm, it puts tension in the muscles along the spine. So it starts to put pressure on the spine. But anytime the breath is off, it starts to throw off your nervous system, which starts to just wreak havoc on the body itself. And so the oils to use are usually hyssop, larch, Sitka. You could use myrtle and anula. Frankincense sometimes kind of works, but I would stick with hyssop, larch, Sitka, or anula. Okay, now we're going to do some of the therapy part, and if you have the oils, you can use them, and if not, we're still going to go through some of the steps because this is therapeutic even if you're not using the essential oils. So first, you would inhale the oil if you have it, and if not, what you're actually trying to do is you're trying to take a long, slow, deep breath, and then pause, and then you're trying to exhale slower than normal. Right? So like if you inhale and it takes 30 seconds, when you exhale, you want it to be about 40 to 45 seconds. You know, that's just a number. So if you're inhaling 15 seconds, you want to exhale 20 seconds, whatever it is. So basically you want to go, hold your breath, and then exhale slower than your inhalation. Okay, so the very first step would be to do what we call pursed lip breathing, right? Pursed lip breathing. So you would inhale, and then you will purse your lips. So you tighten your lips really tight, and then you force the air out of your lungs. Like the tighter your lips, the better. You're trying to force the air out between your lips. So. And then inhale again. And then tighten your lips. Okay. And then be still. And then if you have the oil, hold the oil up to your nose. And just start taking long, slow, deep breaths. Right now, let's just say any respiratory oil, but if you have hyssop or larch, something like that, let's have you use that.
So preferred hyssop or larch. Okay.
Or anula.
Or anula, perfect.
Yeah. Okay, keep taking some long, slow, deep breaths. Okay, now take a long, slow, deep breath and go as deep as you can. And when you fill up your lungs, like hold your breath for about 5 to 10 seconds and then slowly let it out. And then just let your breath regulate for a moment. And then again, long, slow, deep breath. As full as you can get your lungs, and then hold your breath for about 10 seconds. And then slowly let it out. And then again, long, slow, deep breath. Fill up your lungs as much as they'll go. Hold your breath for about 10, 15 seconds. And then slowly let it go. Okay, so now you're gonna just be still for a minute, let your breath regulate. Again, take a long, slow, deep breath. Go as deep as you can. Fill up your lungs. And then hold your breath. And now try to take in a little bit more air. And then let go. Okay, just let it regulate for a moment. And again, take a long, slow, deep breath. Fill up your lungs, hold your breath. After about 10 seconds of holding your breath, try taking in a little bit more air. Hold your breath. And then gently let go. Okay, let your breath just regulate. Again, long, slow, deep breath. Inhale with the oil if you have it. Long, slow, deep breath. Fill up your lungs. Hold your breath. After about 10 seconds, take in a little bit more air. Hold your breath. And as you're holding your breath now, kind of gently move forward, move back, move forward, move back. A little bit side to side, and then exhale. You're basically trying to stretch your diaphragm, right? So again, just let your breath regulate. Okay, again, long, slow, deep breath in. Fill up your lungs. When they get full, hold your breath for a second, about 10 seconds. Then take a little bit more air in. Hold your breath again. And then once you do that, move forward, move back, move side to side. Also twist, if you can twist. And then let out your breath. And then just be still. Inhale, fill up your lungs. Hold your breath, about 10 seconds. Take in a little bit more air. And then hold your breath, and now twist side to side. You're twisting side to side as much as you can. And then once you're ready, go ahead and let out your breath. Okay. Just let your breath just kind of regulate for a moment. This will take a lot of tension out of your body. Okay. So again, inhale, you're inhaling. And this time you're just going to do the pursed lip breathing. So tighten your lips and then force the air out between your lips again. Okay, just let that soak in. Keep your eyes closed for a moment. Just let it soak in. Okay, so now we're going to try to learn like more appropriate breathing. This is called abdominal breathing. So take one hand, put it on your chest. Take the other hand and put it on your abdomen, right? On your abdomen. Now, as you inhale, the hand on your chest should not move. As you inhale, the hand on your abdomen should come out. So as you inhale, your belly should start moving out. Now, here's the issue. When you have this issue where like when your hand is like this produces what you call paradoxical breathing. So what happens is you breathe more with your chest, and when you inhale, the abdomen goes in because you're trying to elevate your ribs. So you're trying to train yourself to breathe appropriately. So as you inhale, the hand on the chest does not move. As you inhale, the abdomen comes out. As you exhale, the abdomen compresses, right? So you're teaching yourself, inhale, abdomen goes out. Exhale, abdomen compresses. 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 Just be still for a second. This will help to regulate emotions. This will also help to reduce the stress response. It reduces stress levels in the body. Part of the stress response is tied to the breath. Also will decrease body tension. So just let it soak in for a moment. Try if you have an oil that you're using, try just inhaling the oil as you're just sitting and being still. Just take some long, slow, deep breaths. You might be getting the yawns. you know, as you do this, it starts to shift the nervous system. So you might start getting a little sleepy, a little tired. You might start yawning a little bit. It might be nap time. Okay, so again, one hand on the chest, one hand on the abdomen. Start taking long, slow, deep breaths. As you inhale, the abdomen goes out. As you exhale, the abdomen compresses. As you inhale, the abdomen goes out. As you exhale, the abdomen compresses. Inhale, abdomen out. Exhale, abdomen compresses. Inhale, abdomen out. Exhale, abdomen compresses. Inhale, abdomen goes out. Exhale, abdomen compresses. Inhale, abdomen goes out. Exhale, abdomen compresses. Do a few more on your own. And then just let it go. And as you let it go, just breathe regular, but you can inhale your oil as you're just breathing regular. Just inhale it as you're just being still and letting the breath regulate. Okay, so now I'm gonna show you the stretch for the neck, and we're gonna go back and forth between the stretch in the neck and some of the breathing stuff. And you know, it's not like a certain template where you got to do this, then this, then this. We're kind of going back and forth and we're playing with it. Like if you feel that there's a particular area where you're struggling a little bit more, that's the thing to work on. If something really knocks you out as you go through and do this, again, it's the thing that you probably need the work with the most. Okay, so this stretch, I'm going to show you how to do it. So watch me first, because ideally you'll do this laying on your back. Like doing it sitting up the way I'm doing it is not the most efficient way. Like watch what I'm doing, and then you'll duplicate it by laying on the ground, right? So this actually stretches two muscles. This is stretching the scalenes, and it's stretching the two rope muscles that run from like behind your ear down to your collarbone and your breastbone, right? So the sternocleidomastoid. So basically what you're doing is you're going to be laying on your back. You're looking, you know, straight up. And so you're going to take one arm and you're going to reach over the head, right? Over the head. Now, you're going to just slightly begin pulling your head, and you know, you can move your head a little bit, but at some point you're kind of pushing it a little bit with your hand. So you're just using your hand to guide it. Don't force it and don't make it hurt. If it starts getting twitchy, then you stop, right? Okay, so very first thing you do is you're stretching it like this, right? Okay. Then the next thing you're going to do, you're going to let that be that way for about 10 or 15 seconds. Then you're just going to stay in this position, but you're going to rotate your chin and your head like you're looking at your armpit. So you're going to move your hand and you're going to the back part of your head, and you're still kind of stretching it over to the side. Okay. Keep like looking at the armpit. Okay, and then let it go back to center again, like back to normal. And again, you're stretching it again. And then this time you're looking up like you're trying to look behind you. And so you move your hand and you're getting a little bit more towards the forehead area. And you're stretching that. So you should be able to feel it like here and like down deep in this area, like in here, both ways. So your head's like so. So first action is you're going sideways and then you're rotating it up. And then let the head come back to center again. Again, you're stretching it. And then again, look at the armpit. So you see my hand is always going in the same motion. It's just depending on where my head's rotated, you're grabbing different parts of the head. So I'm looking down towards the armpit and I'm stretching. When it's like in the normal phase, it's on the side of the head. And then when I'm looking like more up, I'm grabbing more towards the front of the head. And the motion is the same. Then gently let the head come back to center. Kind of move your head back and forth a little bit. And then you're doing the same on this side. You're stretching. Looking towards your armpit. Looking up. Go back to center. Down. Up. And then let everything go and just take some long, slow, deep breaths with your oil. Long, slow, deep breaths with the oil. God, just that little bit I did on my neck, I can feel it's way looser already. Right? Okay. So now take a long, slow, deep breath with the oil. Fill up your lungs. Hold your breath for about 10 seconds. Take in a little bit more air. And then go side to side. And then when you're ready, let out the air. And then take some long, slow, deep breaths, just letting your breath regulate. Just inhale, exhale. Nothing in particular. Just inhale and exhale. Okay, and then take a long, slow, deep breath. Hold your breath. Take in a little bit more air. Hold your breath and then move forward, like bend forward and bend back. Bend forward, bend back, and then a little bit of side to side. The goal is to arch your back a little bit and bend forward like you're touching your toes. Inhale, hold your breath again, and then repeat that process where you bend forward and side to side. Samantha just goes, I don't have a large lung capacity. We don't really utilize a lot of our lung capacity, our breath, unless you really have trained, either through sports or singing or, playing an instrument. It's a great way to relax the body. It's a great way to relax tension. It kind of plays into what we're going to talk about next, which is pain. relaxing soft tissue. This would actually even enhance sleep. Okay, now you can put the oil down and let's do the pursed lip breathing again. So take a long, slow, deep breath, hold your breath, tighten your lips, and then force the air out again as best you can. And then just be still. One hand on your chest, one hand on your abdomen. Like, let's train your breath again. Take a long, slow, deep breath. As you inhale, the belly goes out. As you exhale, the belly compresses. As you inhale, the belly goes out. As you exhale, the belly compresses. As you inhale, the belly goes out. As you exhale, the belly compresses. Do that a few more times. Do about 7 or 8 more of those, where you just inhale, belly goes out, exhale, belly compresses. Okay, just let everything regulate. Hold the oil up to your nose as you just take normal breaths. You're not really straining to inhale or exhale. Just inhale the oil. Okay, let the oil go, let the inhalation go. Just be still for a second. Again, you're going to do this from laying on the ground. You're going to lay on the ground, you're going to reach over, and we're going to do the neck stretch again. So you're grabbing kind of over by your ear, and then you're just gently bending the neck, trying to get your ear to your shoulder. Don't force it. Keep yourself comfortable. Let the pressure go up with the hand a little bit. Rotate like you're trying to look at your armpit. Grab kind of towards the back of the head. And again, you're still stretching in that same direction. Lift the hand up. Rotate the head like you're looking up towards the sky. You're grabbing like the temple area, the outer part of the forehead. And again, you're trying to stretch the area in the same direction. Notice the neck is feeling different than it did the first time. And then let it go. Let the head center. Move your head back and forth a little bit. This keeps you from knocking any bones out of place as you stretch side to side. None of these movements are fast. Everything's soft and gentle. Don't be forceful with any of it. Okay, so again, I'm kind of doing it from this side so you can see a little better. So I'm grabbing and I'm stretching. Trying to move my ear to my shoulder. Now I let go. I'm rotating my head like I'm looking at my armpit. I'm grabbing towards the back of my head and I'm stretching. I think you should feel it like more in the backside right in here. Let it go. Rotate the head up, looking at the sky. My hand's in the same position. Now it's just grabbing a different part of the head, the temple and forehead area. And again, I'm pulling it down. Let everything normalize. Move your head back and forth a little bit. Take some long, slow, deep breaths and just breathe into whatever areas feel a little tense or were a little tight. Okay, now let's just see something. Take your hand like so, bend your fingers back, and then touch towards the top of the palms. So you're arching them back and just see, did that change at all?
Doesn't matter what hand.
You actually want to test both hands because you're basically testing the entrapment on each side. So you're testing this side and then you're testing this side. Like if you only had an issue on your right side, your left one could be fine. Your right one would be like this. Okay, let's open this up to sharing experiences and questions and answers. Unmute yourself or type in, but let's go ahead and open this up. How was that for you guys? Besides kind of knocks you out a little bit.
I felt it in my shoulder a lot.
Yeah, like especially like you'll feel it in your shoulder, especially when you're looking at your armpit. And then like, boy, even when I was doing it, it's these little, like, they look like little fingers and they're very deep. These muscles that you're stretching are what stabilizes the head when you're sitting there. It keeps the head from flopping side to side. And so when you get in there, you'll notice it's like quite deep and it's like way tighter than you would think, but it's not like the muscles that you would grab, reach and grab the back of your neck. They're way deeper than that. And so you'll feel them in one place or another. Yeah, so.
I get lightheaded when I do the pursed lip breathing.
Yeah, that's just because of the effort. Yeah, that's kind of normal.
If my neck hurts more, was I stretching too much?
You probably stretch it a little too hard. Yeah, like these muscles are real dense, and so the tendency is when we stretch is we tend to stretch it a little harder than we should. So when you stretch it, like soften it up a little bit. If you just take some long, slow, deep breaths and just kind of keep moving your head back and forth and everything, the movement should be really soft, really gentle, really super soft, really super gentle.
There was a lot of cracking in my neck.
Yeah, cracking can happen. A little bit of grinding. You know, sometimes we'll get like low grade achiness on the back of the neck. Like it manifests kind of superficially, but it's still actually tied to these muscles that you're stretching.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Hey, Tracy.
Hey, so
Hey.
after that, I tweaked. It feels like the space between levator and my C7, T2,
Okay.
kind of tweaked that little area right there. Aren't
It feels kind of deep or no?
there- I don't know.
Yeah. It's probably one of the scalenes.
That makes sense.
Yeah, like the first few times that you know, like going back in the day, like when you know, when I was treating people that had whiplash or had a head injury, you know, we would show them, and the first like 2 or 3 times you do it, you tend to overstretch it, or you try to push it too hard. It just needs to be really super soft and gentle, like,
I
you
know what
know.
you're talking about, Greg.
Yeah. And so, you know, the first few times people usually tend to overstretch it a little bit, and then you kind of reach your like, oh, I can only push it so hard, and you kind of know what it is, and you start doing it, and it just is like soft and gentle. And so over a period of time, like it usually takes 2 or 3 times to get used to it. And then after that, the soreness or the achiness that would come from doing it, it usually diminishes. I find also inhaling the oils helps quite a bit, you know, because you're relaxing muscle as you're doing it, and you're deepening your breath. And the more you deepen the breath, the more these things relax. And even the thing with doing the hands like here and training the abdomen to go in and out will actually relax those muscles as well. And so, you know, you're trying to hit all of them and not just feel that you need to stretch this out, but yeah, like that it feels a little tweaky or a little sore right off the bat. It's normal because you're learning how to stretch it. You know, you're stretching something that hasn't really been stretched before. Like, you know, very rarely has a person ever stretched this. These muscles are really dense and really tight. And if you're having this issue, they're in a state of dysfunction. And so whenever that's the case, the softer and the more gentle, the better.
I'm applying warming muscle tonic right now.
Yeah, anything that is
thing.
relaxing.
Yeah. So there was one more thing. When we were holding our breaths and we were bending backwards,
Uh-huh.
I felt like a stuckness at the bottom of my sternum, like right where the diaphragm.
Yeah.
Would it be beneficial to like work that area?
Sure, if you can do it with body work, you can do it with that. But I mean, part of what we're doing is we're stretching the diaphragm when we do that. And so even just, you know, doing the inhalations with the oils and doing those motions is to unwind the diaphragm. Yeah.
That was powerful. No one's ever shown me that. And I've done a
Yeah.
lot of classes
Yeah.
and things. So thank you.
Yeah, like that whole thing about like forward, backward, you know, I say forward as I move back. You're moving backward and forward, and then bending side to side, you know, and sometimes you have to do it on multiple breathing patterns. Like, and you go side to side. And then the big one also is the twisting. Like if you really twist, for one, it will help to relax the diaphragm. And 2, it's a way to rapidly cleanse the solar plexus.
Well, it was very helpful and I appreciate it.
Yeah. Good.
Go ahead, Marianne.
Hey, Marianne.
I've not ever paid that much attention to my neck, until I started attending your classes and you made me aware. And my neck I've been very, very conscious that it's all related, especially
Yeah,
to the pain in my shoulders and arms.
yeah.
And
And
since,
almost everybody has a neck issue.
yeah,
Like it's like almost everybody has a neck issue and almost everybody has a hip flexor low back issue. Like it is just mechanics. Like you've been alive, you've been moving around, you've had stresses, whatever. It's going to be maybe a little bit different from person to person, but we all got something going on here and in the
Yeah.
low back.
yeah. And doing this exercise, my whole neck has been freed up. I don't think it's ever been this relaxed ever
Good.
that I
good,
can
good.
remember.
Yeah.
And it really works. And I did get more feeling in my hands, but
Yeah, it should open up the
interestingly-
hands. Yeah,
but
totally.
interestingly, what I get is pain in my wrist and my fingers, especially on my right side.
So
So it's like
sometimes what happens with that, where there might be a little bit of pain, is could
It
have
feels like
stretched.
arthritis.
Yeah,
pain.
could have
Yeah.
stretched a little too much. I doubt that's what it is.
No,
but
it's not
always.
that.
But like, yeah, sometimes what happens is those nerves have been compressed and they're a little bit asleep, just like when you sit on your foot and your foot goes to sleep. And then when it comes back
Yeah.
to wake, it hurts for like a little
Yes,
bit and then
yeah.
it's fine. Sometimes that happens with the arms.
Yeah.
Like it shouldn't last for very long.
No, it doesn't last.
Yeah.
But to me, it's a good sign that
Yeah,
I'm
it
getting
means they're
more
alive.
feeling.
Awake.
So it's a thank you so much.
Yeah, good. Good. And how about like your head, your thought processes? Don't you notice like your head feels a little clearer when you go through and do this?
Well, what I notice, I mean, lately I've been stuck in my head and it's sort of freed my head and I'm not there at all right now. It's
Right,
great.
right.
I mean, in a good way, I guess.
Yeah,
maybe.
good.
Yeah. So it's magic.
Good.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Fantastic, even down into middle shoulder blade. When I raise my shoulders, the worst side popped in a good way. I see lots of future progress in this.
Oh, good. Who was that? I'm just curious. Oh, good, Deborah. And like I remember in one of the study groups, I think you said your neck's always kind of real tight. How is your neck feeling right now? Is your neck feel like it's loosening up a little bit, or what's your feeling on that?
I feel progress in all sorts of places.
Yeah,
It's not just my neck.
yeah.
So I'm super excited. The other discovery that I had was I sort of was questioning how much of this was my problem, because my breathing, I'm able to breathe really long out. And that was one of the checks for the symptoms. I can exhale really long. But when we did this, and one of the little movements we did, I got that tension in my upper sternum area.
Mhm.
Oh, I think it was when you asked to breathe a little, do the extra breath. So that was one of the symptoms too, right? It's all connected.
Yeah, there's
into-
going to be, it's not going to be like all of them for everybody. Like you're going to have
Yeah.
like a pocket of this, a pocket of that.
Okay.
The only one that's the really big indicator when it's really bad is the finger test. I
have that.
So when the scalenes are compressing the brachial plexus, which is the bundle of nerves, you just literally can't do that. But the breath can be, paradoxical, which means, opposite of what it should. You might be a bit more of a chest breather. You might have times where you can breathe kind of good in one area, but not in another. There's all kinds of variations of that. And even different parts of the neck are gonna be tight for different people. And so this can get thrown off for all kinds of things. It could be that the neck gets really cold. It could be an injury. It could be whiplash. It could be the way you slept. Could be colds and flus where you coughed a whole bunch. You know, there's lots of factors that could make this happen. Could even be sleep patterns, like how your neck is when you're sleeping. You know, if you're stretching it too much or laying on your stomach and have your head twisted to one side. You know, there's all kinds of variations, but you know, you go through and unwind this, and it's really quite amazing how quickly when you start addressing it and using the breath and teaching yourself to breathe, you know, appropriately, and then you do those real gentle stretches, it's really amazing how quickly it responds. And so sometimes in really extreme situations, it's like these little finger muscles on each side of your neck, and they'll get so tight that they'll elevate the first rib and they'll compress the nerve even more. So you'll have a lot of pain in the, it can be pain in the arms or numbness and tingling in the arms. And so sometimes with just a few treatments, actually even that can go away. You know, we used to treat it a bunch in whiplash and head traumas, but it's just one of those things where any sort of arm involvement, I would usually at some point go to this particular component in therapy. And it didn't always start off this way. Like I would start off treating other things, unwinding certain things, but at some point it makes it stronger. And you know, after we kind of do a Q&A, we're going to actually revisit it again. And remember how I told you to put the vetiver on the base of the skull and all that? You would do that and take it even further by going through and doing that. And so, you know, I was kind of already getting you to go in this direction a little bit, but the combination, you can unwind your neck very, very quickly by going through and doing just this simple stretch can do it. But there's other stretches as well, but this one's a big one.
I feel like this is life-changing. Thank you very, very much.
You're so welcome. I mean, in therapy, like when I was treating whiplash patients, you know, we would do therapy for a while to stabilize them and everything. But this breath work with this stretch, I usually, you know, my sessions were usually right about an hour. I would work them through this 2 to 3 sessions in a row of just really helping them get it down, because at that point they could go home and do self-treatment, self-healing. And it's such a thing that you unwind so many things related to the neck. You know, the other thing this really helps with is vertigo, like vertigo and balance issues. Like it's some of the same mechanisms are what throws the inner ear off. Because what can happen with the inner ear is you can go in and there can be no inflammation, the inner ear looks fine, but still the muscle in the neck throws the inner ear off when you're walking. And that sternocleidomastoid, like those 2 rope muscles on each side, they'll really, like if they're tightened, which comes with coughing, strained breathing, you know, injuries to the neck, they can throw the inner off to such a degree that, like when you're walking, like say you're walking like this is your feet, and you're walking, at some point you can really tell when one of those muscles is really bad, because you'll be walking and then just randomly your leg will have to go out to the side to stabilize you, and then you walk again. So you'll go.
Yep, I've experienced that.
Yeah, that is a tracking thing with your gait, and it is literally your neck throwing your inner ear off. That's literally what it is. And so by going through and doing this, you're unwinding the mechanism, and then you start to do it, and the walk starts to track appropriately. So that's one of the things, like when I would treat people with whiplash, is I would take them outside the office and I'd have them, walk on the sidewalk, go walk all the way down to the end of the sidewalk and walk back. And I would count how many times that their leg would go out. And, most people is like 0 to like maybe once, but like really severe whiplashes, it would be like every 2 or 3 steps. I mean, it would be like 15, 20 times and just a short distance there and back. And so we treat it and we keep watching like, okay, the amount is going down, the amount is going down. And then finally they do it and they wouldn't do the sidestep. And so that little sidestep is not the scalenes, it's the sternocleidomastoid, but still equally important muscle in the neck, and also considered one of the muscles for respiration, meaning it is tied to elevating your rib cage when you're breathing. And so you treat those 2 muscles and the other neck stuff really kind of starts to fall in place. And by doing those stretches the way that we're doing, you're stretching the scalenes and you're stretching the sternocleidomastoid. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck with that stretch.
Thanks again. Thanks very
You're so
much.
welcome. You're so welcome. I'm glad that's helping. Monitor that little sidestep and then, do this daily for like it. I mean, it's not like it's something like you have to do forever. It's just something like you rehab it for a little while, like 2 or 3 weeks, and then you'll notice you're not doing the sidestep anymore. Your breathing's way better. Your fingers can touch, like all those things. And then every once in a while, just do a little tune-up. It's not something that's a forever thing. Like if you have a bad ankle, you just go, gotta stretch this out every day for the rest of my life. This is not one of those scenarios. You unwind it, and it usually ends up being just kind of good. Like, you just rehab it a little bit and then you're good to go.
That was actually one of the questions, was how often?
Yeah, you could do it daily. At first, you might want to give yourself a little break, like just because you're straining something that has had a lot of tension in it, and it might make you a little bit sore. And so soreness happens the first few times you do it, but as you get used to kind of stretching it again, by the 2nd or 3rd time, usually the soreness stops. And so always be careful not to push it super hard, right? And then once you start to feel comfortable with it, you could do it kind of daily. And, I've gone years without doing it. I do a day or 2 of doing it, and man, my neck feels so much better. I say to myself, why haven't I been doing this for the last few years? And then I forget about it again for another few more years. Like it's one of those things, like once it starts feeling better, you just kind of forget about it. It's not something that you have to do all the time, but like you kind of know when it's bothering you, like I have this stretch I can do, and it's really important to do the breath with the stretching. Really super important to do the breath with the stretching. Usually when I would do this in therapy, we'd work on the breath for a while before we did the stretch, because I didn't want people to just jump to the stretch, because if you don't have your breath kind of going down the right path, the stretch is really short-lived. But if you get your breath really working well, the stretch unwinds it and then makes it last. So.
Just clarification, when you're talking about the breath, we did a
Mhm.
couple of different breath exercises. Are you talking about making sure that you use your belly pushing out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
Thanks.
exactly. Good job.
Does this help a pinched nerve in the neck?
A pinched nerve, meaning that one of the vertebrae is compressing. So we're talking about an impingement. Possibly, but probably not. This is more for entrapments with the brachial plexus. So this is happening a little bit kind of away from the vertebrae. I mean, it's still close, but it's far enough away that it's not, an impingement. The impingement that it does happen to help is the elevation of the first rib. sometimes this will relax it so it takes pressure off that first rib. And sometimes I've actually been able to put the first rib back just with the stretch and the inhalation. But a pinched nerve in the neck, it might help, but it wouldn't be my go-to thing.
Along with the breathing and neck stretch, how do we release the infraspinatus trigger points?
Infraspinatus are more on the shoulder blade. Yeah, maybe we'll show you a stretch for that after the break, because that's actually not a neck issue, that's a shoulder girdle issue. Okay, so how about this? Let's take a little break. We'll come back at 20 after. We're going to talk about pain, and I'll lead with the stretch for the infraspinatus and how to go through and do that, which is a big muscle on the shoulder blade, part of your rotator cuff. So I'll see you at 20 after.
And we did have a question come in right when we got to break, so I forgot. We did about 5 different breaths. Is there a specific order?
I mean, try to kind of follow the order, because they do build on each other, but if you do them out of order, it's still okay. You know, that doing the pursed lip breathing starts to unwind the bronchioles and allows for you to take like a deeper breath, and then taking that breath of like a deep breath and then holding your breath and exhaling, and then eventually holding your breath and then taking more in. You're starting to expand your lung capacity. And then when you start bending forward and back and side to side and twisting, you're starting to stretch the diaphragm. And then when you go through and you do the hand and you're teaching yourself like, okay, as you inhale, the belly should go out, and as you exhale, the belly compresses. That's more about re-educating the breath and the breathing cycle. And then you can jump around, but like that's the most efficient way, like order to do it. But if you do them out of order, it still works. It's just they're kind of building on each other a little bit. You're opening up your breath like this, you will shift your nervous system quite a bit. It will also affect like your mental faculties a little bit. Like, so sometimes it feels like, I don't know, like sometimes how like when you wake up like you're in the middle of a dream or something, your brain is shifting around a little bit, and it's a little bit disoriented is not the right word, but anytime you do stretches like this, you're letting go of stress and you're basically deactivating trigger point activity. And anytime you deactivate trigger point activity, you're changing the limbic function in the body, and you're changing like the fascia and the muscle in your body and your stress response. And so we hold a lot of stress in our diaphragm. We hold a lot of stress in our diaphragm. And so when you start letting go of trigger points, even like say down in the calves and stuff, part of where your body expels is out of the diaphragm. The diaphragm, the hip flexors, and up in your throat area a little bit. And so, when you go through and do this, it's not just like, oh, you've stretched the muscle. You kind of have changed your physiology. You've changed your cognitive abilities a little bit. One of the things that can happen too is the solar plexus can release because you're changing the nature of the diaphragm. And if that's the case, you might feel like congested in that area. Sometimes you might feel a little bit woozy. I've had a few patients get a little bit nauseous afterwards. There was usually some sort of significant issue in the neck, but it's always a potential. And I wouldn't read a lot into like, why is it happening? It's just something's releasing out of the body. You could do it 20 times in a row and it would be fine. And then on the 21st, you could have some weird release like that. And so, always kind of take that into account. One of the things that you could do afterwards is also use something like Palo Santo or Chakra Root Cleanser or something like that, just to blow things out of the solar plexus. Gilead would be another really good one. Inhale with your awareness on the front solar plexus and then inhale with your awareness on the back solar plexus, just to clear out whatever sort of stuff kind of comes to the surface.
Yeah, because they said they were feeling a little bit woozy.
Yeah. Did it stay or did it pass?
It passed.
It passed. Yeah. Yeah. Probably just releasing something. Like, I mean, sometimes the stress comes off so quickly that, laying down for it is good. You let it pass and then it moves on. And so, yeah.
I think that's it. Someone was just asking what were those oils again, and we're posting them.
Yeah, Palo Santo is a good cleanser, Chakra Root Cleanser. Gilead is really good because Gilead is cleansing to lower emotions, and lower emotions also being stress. Stress ease could work, de-stress could work, any version of that.
And they said, I'm super good. Thanks.
Okay, good. Yeah. And like, even if your neck was a little bit sore, it usually doesn't last for very long. Like, you do it and you go, oh, my neck, oh. And you give it 5 or 10 minutes and you start moving around and it's like, wow, it's moving better than it was. And so even I think Tracy was having a little bit of stiffness in her neck. Tracy, do you mind popping back on real quick?
Do I know?
How how's
Sorry,
how's your
Brian was
neck?
talking to me.
Yeah, it's okay. How's your neck doing?
It's so much better.
Yeah, good. The stiffness usually lasts for about 5 minutes. Like every once in a while on myself, like it's usually if I push too hard, it would last like maybe 10. But after that, it passes. Like, you go, oh God, it's sore. I don't know if I should have done that. 5 minutes later, you're like, oh, my neck hasn't felt as good in ages. It's just the thing with muscles like that is when something's out of alignment or when something has had a trigger point in a while, the muscles begin to behave kind of like bone. They get really tight, they lock up, they're trying to prevent movement in a joint, and they get really stiff and locked. And instead of relaxing and flexing and relaxing and flexing, they just go to this like flex state and they just stay. So when you get in and you start moving them around and starting to stretch them, it's like something that's been frozen into this state, and you start moving it around and it's just not used to moving. And then you move it around and it's like, oh my God, it feels so much better, so much easier to move. And so, yeah.
I've got that SCM, and I think scalings are part of it too.
Sure.
On the right side where they clamp down, and when they do, it's hard for me to breathe. I can't really talk, and I just have to kind of wait until it lets go. That is because of the tension that's always there. Like and that tension is not there now.
Oh yeah. This should alleviate that.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Yeah, like give yourself like a day or so and then maybe do it again and again stretch like on the floor, because the thing is the scaling muscles are involved in stabilizing your head, like when you're sitting up or walking or something. And so like in this position there's a little bit more tension into them than when you lay down on your back. And so when you lay down on your back, you're taking the tension off of them. It makes it easier to stretch them.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
I can go ahead, Sonia.
Hey, Sonia.
Yeah, with those twists and stuff, the next stuff, my um Atlas torque. Is there something that helps that?
What do you mean it torqued?
It torques, it twisted. Uh, it it twists right to left. It torques.
Right.
The Atlas torques.
But are you saying that it moved? Because I mean, the Atlas is really hard to move.
Well, it's been, I had an injury from birth where it got torqued. And so I've had a chiropractor who works with neurological and osteopath working on it every week since 2016. And they've been very gradually turning it back, but it torqued more back out of a line with that exercise. And they said it's slow because to fix because it was torqued so long ago, it's caused structural and it's caused a spinal curvature and it's caused fascial neuromuscular changes. So
Try putting some vetiver in and around the area, like around the base of the skull, all the way around from the ear all the way to the back, and see how that treats you. Like, I mean, it might have moved, but my guess is that probably aggravated some of the muscles in and around that bone is really super hard to move, and that exercise shouldn't have moved that.
Well, it was part out of place in the first place. It just twisted more.
Yeah. So try putting the vetiver on there, just see if it calms that muscle down a little bit. Because what you're doing when you're putting the vetiver there is you're relaxing that plane of fascia in the area. So that just kind of helps open all of that up.
Mm.
And it relaxes the muscle in and around the area.
So someone wasn't here when we were doing it. They were wondering, what would you suggest to put on a neck that just gets stiff?
Neck that just gets stiff, upper part, lower part, sides, like by the vertebrae, up at the base of the skull. Where is it getting stiff?
Maybe I'll respond. Kathy, if you're there, that was for you. Another question that did come in. Can you use spikenard instead of vetiver?
Yeah, I mean, I know they smell kind of similar and they both are very good muscle relaxers. The vetiver stimulates more circulation in the tissue than the spikenard, and so they're not completely interchangeable, but close enough. If you didn't have the vetiver, you could use the spikenard, but ideally you would use vetiver. Vetiver is a very good circulatory, like tonic stimulant, but does it like in a way that's very cooling, and also has an impact on stimulating a little bit of lymphatic movement. And so both would work. Vetiver would work a little better. Yeah.
And we'll just have to come back to the next stiff thing later.
Okay, so we're gonna, what was the muscle that somebody wanted?
Oh yeah, it was the infraspinatus.
Infraspinatus? Yeah. Okay, infraspinatus. Yeah, I mean, we could easily, I mean, maybe we do that at some point where we go through the body kind of trigger point by trigger point, but I have a whole class that is not something I was going to present to you guys. It's a thing on trigger points. It's more for body workers. We were going to present it at the beginning of the pandemic, and then the pandemic happened, and I had a class that we were getting ready to do with a massage school, and you know, it just never happened. But yeah, let's see how to address this in this setting. Okay, so the infraspinatus. Let's do it like this. Okay, can you see this a little bit? This is my Uncle Bob.
You want me to zoom in to just point?
No. So, okay, so here's your shoulder blade, right? So this is your whole shoulder blade, right? The infraspinatus is a muscle that covers this whole area below this spine right here. It covers this whole area. So it's part of your shoulder girdle, part of your rotator cuff. Like, you know, when you move your shoulder around and your shoulder is popping and kind of grinds and clicks and pops, it's because of the muscle in this area. So this can cause pain all the way down into the hand, and especially into the outer two fingers. If I remember right, it can actually even cause pain down in the thumb, but it will have a radiating pain that goes down the front of your arm, the bicep, a little bit up here, down the front, and then down into the hand. And so very common issue with shoulder issues. And, you know, we were dealing with like that neck muscle, but basically, let's see how much this moves. Basically, the way to stretch it is to kind of do like this. You can see, right? You're kind of stretching it like this. And so if it's really bad, a lot of times you only get it up to here. Ideally, it should be able to go up about that high. But if you have a shoulder injury, you'll notice that you can only do about like that, right? Like I have one shoulder, I can go all the way up, and then the shoulder that I blew out of socket, I can only get the arm about here, right? And so like if, okay, put it on me again. So this is the way to test for the infraspinatus. Okay, like this is one of the ways that you check, like, is this dysfunctional? Is you take, let me make sure I'm not sitting on my shirt here. You take one hand and you go up as high as you can, and then you reach around and it should cover a little bit of your mouth. Ideally, you should be able to cover half of your mouth. Now I can stretch and do that with this side, and that one's my bad one, right? And so it's not always the greatest indicator, but it's one of the ways that you check, right? And so
I can't go up.
right, but you can do that, right? So I'm the same, right? So one of the things you can do, you can still use the hyssop. Here you could also use the fascial release blend or the trigger point blend. So you can use fascial release, you can use hyssop, you can use larch. Hemlock spruce. You could actually also use probably galbanum or palo santo, but hyssop, fascial release, or trigger point blend would be the three that I would use, right? And then begin inhaling, right? Begin inhaling, and then you do the thing where, like you can see, like you're stretching. Can you see
Yeah,
that
I
on my
can see
back?
it, yeah.
Okay. you're stretching your arm, you hold it in place, you inhale it while your arm is stretching there, then let it relax, then go up and try to move it higher and keep inhaling while you're stretching like that. So that's the way to stretch the infraspinatus. Yeah.
When they just did that test, they go, I just undid the good work we did before the last test.
Yeah, like it's always good to do this as gently as possible. And you know, when you have dysfunction and you know, an injury site or something, and you get in there, start doing it, first few times you do it, it's not comfortable. It's really not super comfortable. The oils help substantially. So just do real gentle motions while inhaling the oils, and then let yourself relax. It's a way to unwind it, but yeah.
Go ahead, Marianne.
Hey, Mary.
I can't reach my mouth on either side.
Yeah.
What does
I
that
mean,
indicate?
it just means that your shoulders are a little tight, like your rotator cuffs. This is what I would say. The one that we did before break with the neck, way more of has way more impact on your physiology and your mind than the one for the shoulder girdle. The shoulder girdle that we just did, where you know you're reaching around, it's impactful. It's for the shoulder girdle, but it's not as in a critical area. I mean, it still has to do with your, you know, your shoulders and everything,
Right.
but it doesn't impact your breath. It doesn't impact your cognitive functions, doesn't throw off your balance. You know, it has more to do with like how things radiate down the hands, and it can make the tension in your shoulders like kind of tight and uncomfortable. But when that neck part is off, it really throws things off. When the shoulder's off, it's uncomfortable, but it's nowhere near as impactful as the one with the neck.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
there's no way I can increase the flexibility?
Yeah, like
or-
so if you begin inhaling the oils and then you stretch it like by going through and doing this. Oh,
Okay,
like that, and then up, move it higher and higher.
okay.
And then does that release the trigger points on it? They're wondering how.
Eventually. Yeah, eventually. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You could also put trigger point blend or fascial release, or even like marjoram or basil on the shoulder blade itself. Again, in this area, you know, cover this whole area with the essential oil. I would probably do a neat application, but you'll need to do it several times. Pepper would also work. Viscosity would also work. Just putting it on this area, and it will help free that up.
And then how much of that test depends on the length of your arm?
Yeah, a shorter forearm can or shorter upper arm can impact it, but usually the way the body's laid out, almost everybody, like, you know, everything being even, should be able to touch at least somewhere kind of close to the mouth, even if the upper arm is a little bit shorter. Okay, so let's start talking about pain. So pain, I think everybody knows what pain is. There are different kinds of pain. Pain is the #1 reason why people seek medical attention in the first world countries. You know, third world countries, it's infectious diseases. But in more developed countries, pain is the #1 reason people seek attention. And so it directly affects, you know, how you feel, your quality of life, your sense of well-being, whatever you'd like to say. And there are several different types of pain, and we're going to talk about each of these pains, because as you go through and identify them, their treatment is actually somewhat different because their causes are different. right? So not all pain is the same. The most common type of pain is nociceptive pain. But first, let's just talk about what we call acute pain, which is you were just walking along and you stubbed your toe, or you're walking along and twisted your ankle, or somebody bumped into you and knocked you down or something like that. So basically you injured yourself. So when you go through and you injured yourself, you have a couple of things you want to go through and address. So right off the bat is you want to address the tension in the body that comes, and there's a little bit of a stress and a shock, right? So the pain usually can be alleviated by the use of something simple like marjoram. If there is bruising or like, there's been a blow to the area, I would use something like helichrysum. If no skin was broken, you could use hyssop as well, but if skin was broken, definitely use helichrysum. Like I think I was telling you guys about 2 weeks ago, I have this friend that he's my person that brings things over from Nepal. And he lives in Southern California, kind of in a bad part of town. So he has this dog that's like a crazy guard dog that just barks and barks and barks. And I love dogs. And I was walking and, he's got a fence between, me and the dog. And I just stuck my hand out to like say hi. And he stuck his nose through the fence and bit my finger. Like he bit and then he shook. Like as soon as he got his teeth in, he started shaking his head. Like dog knows what he's doing, right? He's a very good guard dog. That was totally on me. I'm the one that stuck my hand out by the crazy barking dog. And so, I was looking at it and it probably needed 3 or 4 stitches. And I was like, God, I'm traveling. I don't want to go get stitches. And although I probably should have, but I started putting helichrysum on it. I cleaned it up, put helichrysum on it and bound the wound with some bandages. And, it was completely closed in probably 6 to 7 days. Like, I mean, there was still a line where the cut had been, or where it was a pretty jagged cut. It wasn't just a clean cut. But the thing is like the helichrysum, for one, cleans out the wound, right? So if there's any infectious material, it helps to break that down, get rid of it. 2, it reduces the inflammation that's in the area. And 3, it literally starts the wound, it starts it closing and starts it to bind. And so I was putting helichrysum on it 3 or 4 times a day. And I mean, it looked like it needed stitches really bad for the first day or 2. And by day 2 or 3, it was just looking like a cut. And, within 4 or 5 days, it was amazing at how well it had closed. And so, I just kept putting helichrysum on it. The inflammation kept going down. It kept binding, and, no stitches. There's some nerve damage there, but other than that, it's pretty good to go. And so helichrysum for any sort of bruise, cut, contusion, anything that causes the skin to be black and blue, any sort of inflammation, helichrysum is a very good go-to thing. Now, if you were walking and you say rolled your ankle, twisted your ankle, you could put helichrysum on that, but something like marjoram actually would work a little bit better. Because basically you're dealing with a sprain or a strain, right? A sprain or a strain. And so with sprains or strains, marjoram is a pretty good go-to. Like marjoram will knock out that pain quite easily. It takes the tension out, it takes the sprain and the strain out, and allows the body to heal. Now, the quicker you get to a sprain or a strain, the better. Like if you can treat it within the first 5-10 minutes, it will usually hardly have any sort of impact. If you wait like an hour or two later, there could be a little bit of swelling that needs to be addressed at some point, but you still unwind the strain and sprain part. Now, there is a blend called the Birch Complex, which is all the different birches and wintergreen and things like that. This is made for acute injury, especially sprains and strains. Not so much for putting on a wound, like a bruise or an open wound. That's more of a helichrysum issue, but like a sprain or a strain, Birch Complex works incredibly well for that. Birch Complex kind of helps with also just pain in general. Like I use Birch Complex as just to offset the effects of pain on the body. Even when I'm doing spiritual practice and I'm doing purifications, sometimes you're doing deep releases and the body can have a little bit of a pain response. I actually put the Birch Complex on my wrists and then rub them together to help with reducing the discomfort of releasing a lot of energy very quickly from the solar plexus and spine. And it deepens the effect and makes life very, very comfortable with deep meditation and purification. And so that combination works quite well. One of the things that I would also add to this is tarragon, because anytime you have an acute injury, there can be a little bit of shock that goes with it. And if you kind of stop and rest and kind of allow yourself just to be still for a little bit and inhale tarragon, the spasms that are in or around the injured area go down by 50 to 75%. Your emotions calm down and pain levels go from a potential 10 down to like a 3 or a 4, just with inhaling the tarragon. And so like if you're wanting to have like a little travel kit where you're dealing with things in case something happens, marjoram, helichrysum and tarragon could easily be in your kit, and you just pull it out and boom, you're good to go. Usually if you sit and just inhale the tarragon for 5 minutes, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, it will pull you out of the shock from the injury. I used to use this with when I travel with cyclists and they would get into bad bike crashes. I'd have them sit there, have them inhale the tarragon, and within 5 minutes, they were like pretty good. Even if there was a body part that was injured, they were out of the emotional state, they were out of shock, the pain had reduced quite substantially. They could have conversations very easily. They weren't in that fight flight mode. They weren't into repeating the things that they kept, like I was doing this and then this happened, they stopped repeating themselves, all the things that you're looking for as indicators of somebody who's been traumatized. And so helichrysum is always good for trauma as well. But that simple little combination can go a long way for acute trauma. So basically injury. Yeah. So with that one, before we move on to nociceptive pain, is there questions?
Yes, someone's asking, helichrysum neat or in a hydrosol?
No, it needs to be the essential oil. Hydrosol doesn't have enough helichrysum in it to be able to treat the condition. The hydrosol is good for more of the energetic component, but it's not going to have enough of the oil itself in it. A hydrosol is when they distill the oil, it's the water that they use to steam it. And so there's some traces of it in the hydrosol, but it doesn't have enough of the chemistry in it to be able to treat the condition. So very good for a spray, very good for like the emotional trauma of it, but for treating the actual trauma site, it's best to use the essential oil.
Any other questions? You can unmute yourself. You can type in.
Hey, Greg.
Hey,
So lately I've had this thumb issue. And
hitchhiking? You've been hitchhiking a lot?
funny.
Your Facebook, where you're going up or down?
Yeah, I've done that a lot. When I did the stretch the infraspinatus, it tweaked that thumb again. When I think I was trying to get my hand higher.
Yeah, give it like 5-10 minutes. It should pass, but like try not to stretch it quite as hard. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's a referred pain pattern. So even though the thumb is hurting, the actual issue is up on the shoulder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, that's the thing with like stretching is back when I was doing therapy on cyclists, triathletes, long distance runners, and tennis players. We found that people who stretch, you know, in theory, you're stretching to reduce the tendency of injury or reduce the effects of an already existing injury. And what we found is that people who were stretching on a regular basis actually were more prone to injury and weren't recovering as faster. And that was a bizarre piece of information. Like, you know, when we went through and started tallying up the data, like it didn't make any sense. And so we were going back and forth, you know, I say there was a physical therapist and an osteopath that I was working with at the time. And there was an ER doc for the whiplash patients. And when we were talking this out, to none of us, it made sense. Like, you know, it was just like, it should be the opposite. Like it doesn't, like none of this adds up. And so, you know, I started thinking about it like a boy, like an athlete. And I was like, if some is good, then more is better. I think we need to have them show us how they're stretching. And they were stretching like they're going to stretch out that muscle and get it all done at once, you know, pushing really hard, pushing the stretch really hard, really engaging the stretch. And what happens, like, you know, you begin to stretch the muscle and it starts to relax and rest, but then you get past the point of that and you keep pushing it, and then it starts to make the muscle shake. So now the muscle goes from stretching to actually tensing up, and it becomes a strengthening exercise. And so what was happening almost all the time is people were stretching too aggressively or overstretching, and they were actually causing contractions in the things that they were trying to loosen up. And so what was happening, why there were so many more injuries or they weren't healing as fast, is they basically kept aggravating the condition by overstretching or stretching too aggressively. So I really like the idea of the essential oils for this, because it helps you to relax, it helps you to take a deep breath, it helps you to breathe into those particular areas. Even if you do overstretch, it helps to calm it down much faster, but it's better to err on stretching too lightly than overstretching. Like if you're not sure, then back off. Like, you know, keep it soft and gentle and just go into it, because, you know, it's like doing yoga. You're doing yoga very softly and gently. You're not doing calisthenics, right? And so you're breathing into postures, you're breathing into something, you're trying to hold it for a period of time, and you're trying to be comfortable in that position for a period of time. And so stretch softly, very, very softly. You know, like in my early days, I stretched like a boy, caused all kinds of injuries.
Thanks.
Yeah. So you probably just overstretched it a little bit. Yeah. It didn't cause any damage. It's just going to be uncomfortable for a little bit.
Hi, Greg.
Hey, Mary.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good.
I got a thumb question.
Oh, it's Miriam. I thought you said Mary. Okay. Hey, Miriam.
Didn't say
How are
anything.
you? How are you?
It's Miriam. Yeah, hi. Tracy was just talking about her thumb.
Mhm.
A couple of weeks ago, my one of my thumbs just started sort of locking at night. Like I'd get up in the middle of the night and my thumb it would just sort of, it wasn't smooth. It's like I couldn't move. It was like
Like
jerking.
it's locking here
Is
or
it
locking here,
at the top joint?
up here.
Up, keep going up, other way, other way, other way, under the nail, right there.
Oh, like up in here.
Yeah. And so I make sure to sleep with my hands open as much as I can. When you're sleeping, you don't always know, but and I've been massaging it. I've been kind of rolling it in circles, like exercising it in as big a circle as I can. I've been putting some oils on it, but I don't know what I'm putting on it for this because I don't know what it's doing.
Yeah, that's a weird one. So it's the very first joint.
Very first joint started 2 weeks ago, and at least once during the night, I'll wake
And
up.
it locks like this or it locks like this?
It sort of doesn't totally lock. It just sort of jerks back and forth. It's like it's threatening me, like it's going to lock. If I can push through it and there's no pain.
Hmm.
And for what it's worth, I've also been having difficulty with the opposite shoulder.
So shoulder.
Actually, all my joints have been kind of inflamed with the pollen and the heat.
Yeah, it could be inflammatory response. Well, I'm not sure. What I would say is I would take something, definitely treat the joints with something anti-inflammatory. Something blue, like Blue Healer, something like that, where you calm the joints down, reduce the inflammation. But I would use something that's antispasmodic, like marjoram, basil, pepper, something like that. And I would put it on the palm right here, but I would also go up the forearm.
Okay.
Up here, like
Okay.
like really, you see how like that's the middle, like off to the side almost.
Okay.
You could almost like kind of palpate and feel like there's like a little like rope kind of feeling there. Like get in and like kind of twang it like you're twanging a guitar, and then move up a little bit and then twang it again. And see, so like when I get like right about here, so that's about 3 or 4 fingers down from my wrist. Like if I twang right there, it makes my thumb go like that. It makes it start to like tweak. And so most likely you have either a little bit of a deposit there, or you have a bit of a spasm in that area. And so again, it's like right about there.
Okay.
And just get in and just kind of, you can take 2 fingers and like, yeah. Like, so you're not,
I can feel that.
What's that?
Yeah, it's tender there.
Yeah, so you're not sliding your hand back and forth. Get in and find that spot, and then you're moving it, but you're not sliding on the skin. And you just kind of keep finding the sore spot. And then when you get to it, you're not pushing harder. You're just like sitting on it.
Okay.
And then it will start to let go. And then you move it around some more and you find like, okay, what's the next sore spot? And then when you find it, you get on top of it and you let go, but you're not moving on the skin. You're not moving it, but you're moving the skin to where it needs to be.
Okay.
Like that. You see how I'm doing that?
Yes.
And then you get on it, and then you just kind of keep twanging it. And then after a while, you can move up a little bit higher.
Okay.
About 3 fingers, 3.5 fingers down is where the problem's at. But you can
Okay.
go a little bit below it and a little bit above it and work it. And that should alleviate that.
That's great. I did get the Blue Healer. I got the body tonic. I hope
Oh,
I can.
perfect. Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Tell Dave hi for me.
I will.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Hey, Kathy.
Hi, I'm sorry if this is a little off topic, but I just got back from an MRI preparing for my surgery appointment.
Uh-huh.
And they put the dye in you. And of course, they say drink lots of water for a couple of days, trying to get that dye out. So I didn't know if there's some oils that might help
Yeah.
clamp that out.
Do you have St. John's wort?
I do.
A couple, are you in any other medications or anything?
I take an anti-seizure for the spasms of the face. That's about it.
Okay, so take a couple drops in water, drink it down and do it like once or twice a day for like a day or two.
Okay.
Yeah. Your second choice would be Greenland moss, but St.
I
John's.
have both
wort-
of those.
Yeah, like maybe do a day or two of St. John's wort, and then after that, a day or two of the Greenland moss, and you should be solid.
Okay, and twice a day, you said?
Yeah, probably twice a day.
Okay, very good. Because yeah, I want to get that stuff out. I don't need anything.
Yeah, boy, no joke. Yeah.
Thank you.
You
Now
so-
we have you choose the one asking about the neck. And she said her tightness is under her ear.
Yeah, I get this feeling of, and I have to jump in and out because I had to go for the MRI, so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
no
wanna be
problem.
repetitious. But and this is the side I have my face paint on. So I'm
Uh-huh.
feeling this little tightness in that muscle that runs, down the side of your neck, kind of under my right ear.
Okay, like over in there.
Mhm.
And so the pain is trigeminal neuralgia, but do you have any history of Bell's palsy on that side?
Mm-mm.
No.
No. In fact, I
Okay.
didn't get the vaccine because somebody said that's a side effect of it. So that's one of the reasons I didn't need any more stuff going on.
Yeah, you can try putting vetiver on that. If vetiver doesn't work, I would probably do marjoram, like really like several drops, rub it in, several drops, rub it in, but all along the base of the skull. I'd also go in and around the ear,
Okay.
like cover in and around the ear quite substantially, just to loosen that up. You can even go into the jaw a little bit, but right along the baseline. Then from the baseline, if you want, you could take a little bit more and then rub it like from there all the way down into the shoulder
Okay.
and just try to loosen it up that way. You see how like I'm like this.
Yeah.
Like there's a muscle that goes from there down to the shoulder blade there. And when you turn your head to the same side, it would make it worse. Is that
Not really, but what it is because the pain's been so bad, I'm constantly holding this side of my face. I tense up because the
Yeah,
pain's
yeah.
bad. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, but I do feel this kind of like a little bit of a pressure. It's not pain, but it's a little stiffness, a little, is
Right.
that all that's involved?
Yeah. So yeah, try doing that. And it makes me wonder, because you're the one that had the viral activity, right?
Well, I asked you how to do the herpes. Yeah, the herpes
Herpes,
is
right.
what they
It
decided.
makes me wonder if when the herpes stuff comes down, if that doesn't like subside a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I just have a lot of
You
stress.
know,
overall.
I find it very interesting that your physician went there because there has been a couple of cases where, it's pain syndromes and God, they just were not responsive to anything. They were just not responsive to anything. And they were cases usually of spasmophilia, which is like a very minimal movement throws the area into a spasm.
Well, that's what, every time I eat, talk, brush my teeth, it will make that, if I'm quiet, that doesn't hurt right now. But every time I make movement, then that pain gets flared up.
Okay, so with that, let's instead of marjoram and everything, let's have you use like neroli or basil or,
And I
there's-
have spasmophilia too.
I was
as
just
an-
gonna say, if you have the blend spasmophilia, let's have you use that. Because the thing is that literally is the definition of spasmophilia, where a little bit of movement causes a spasm. And so, little to moderate amount of movement. And so those cases, God, we just like by the time they came to see me, they had already seen a whole range of physicians, physical therapists, occupational therapy,
Oh, cranial people, everybody.
Yeah. And we treated it as a viral infection, and it didn't go away like overnight, but within a week or two, it did get significantly better, and it was due to viral activity. Yeah.
Okay, well, he's an MD, but he has an alternative practice. You know, you have to pay out of pocket. So he's
right,
quite
right.
well known and knowledgeable. But when I went in there crying, he says, I think you could have that, and then did the test and called me and said, yeah. But do I put spasmophilia in the same area? you
I would
mentioned?
still put spasmophilia on that and still do the things for the herpes that we talked
Mhm.
about. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't live with it anymore.
I hear you. Boy, that can be very miserable.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Go ahead, Denise.
Hey, Denise.
Let's see. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Am I on? Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so sorry. I had the Mohs surgery last Tuesday, and I wasn't wondering so much, well, a little bit about the site, but actually the surgeon just said to use, he just said to actually use let warm sudsy water from the shower run on my face, and I just couldn't quite do that since it's city water, so I just have been using distilled water, on that site and keeping it really clean. But the bruising all below and around it, all is yellow bruising. Will the marjoram take care of that? Could I use marjoram?
Actually, helichrysum would be the one to use.
Okay.
Yeah. Helichrysum is for the bruising. The marjoram is more for like spasms and things, but the helichrysum would be very good for any sort of bruising, blackening of tissue, hematoma, anything like that. The marjoram, or excuse me, the helichrysum works really well for that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And
Yeah.
then how about for your skin in general? Like, like I tend towards these, well, kind of, I'm fair skinned to begin with, and I've had too much sun exposure when I was younger. So is there like marjoram was kind of helping this one area that just hadn't cleared at all, hardly. It knocked it down some, but not completely.
Right. So helichrysum is always good for the skin. Spikenard's good for balancing out the skin. A lot of times when I want to go through and rehab the skin, I would use something a little bit more like parsley. And one that we don't think about for the skin very often is hyssop. Hyssop can actually be quite good for the skin as well. It's not my go-to thing, but it can be used as like a skin regenerator. And so I would probably try the helichrysum first and then go to parsley. And if you're not really getting the desired effect, I'd switch over and start trying hyssop. The thing with hyssop though, don't do it with any sort of open wound. Like, if there's like a cut or a scratch, it's okay. We just don't want to aggravate the situation. Wait till it's closed to put the hyssop on. But
Okay.
the helichrysum you can put on an open wound. Like that's not a problem. Whenever there's a surgery site, I usually tell people to not start putting it on to the wound site is closed, just because it's a surgery site and the physician's monitoring it, and they don't want any crazy factors put in there, and so we don't want to make the surgeon upset or anything like that. So I just like let it close, and then once it's closed, you can treat it, because the helichrysum will also reduce scarring. And so the helichrysum is the best thing for scarring. And so I would let that be in play, but until the situation is closed, you can cover it on the bruised area, but just don't put it on the site, just to keep your doctor happy. It works fine there. It would work really great, but at the same time, no need to aggravate the doctor.
Yes, completely. Okay, so start with helichrysum, would you say?
Mhm.
And
Yeah. Helichrysum is what you're going to use for a little bit.
okay, All right, thank you
And
very
then
much.
eventually parsley, just to rehab the skin. And if it's still not quite rehabbing, then the hyssop. You know, the thing with some of the sites where there's like precancerous stuff and things like that, I have had a little bit of success with orange oil. And the thing with the orange oil, you will have to put it on neat, but it can be really sensitizing to the skin. Like if you get it on your fingers, it will kind of burn and tingle a little bit. Like it's just irritating. So a lot of times what I have people do is like take a Q-tip, cover the Q-tip substantially with orange oil, and then tap it
Yeah.
on and roll it on the spot. And we've had things where it got tested, and then after the fact, they went back and it was no longer present. And so it doesn't do it every time, but more than half the time it works.
It's worth a try.
Yeah,
Early.
and it's cheap and it's easy, and if it keeps you from having to have a procedure or put a bunch of medication on it, and then just, you know, protect the skin with you know, hats, and you know, you can I'm sure you already know, like you can buy clothing that's has high SPF ratings and things like that. And
Thank you. What about that spikenard, the one you brought up that, when would that come into play?
like that's good for just like kind of balancing out the skin. Like if you have like problem skin, or like you have the potential for irritation. I have used it a little bit on things like psoriasis and things like that, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it basically just helps to balance out and normalize the skin. And so, you know, it could be that you're having rashes, you're having, you know, outbreak, you have something that's really dry, something that's really like kind of oily or greasy, and it can just help balance out different types of skin types.
Thank you. That's great. I appreciate the information.
And, you know, and there's a whole section towards the back that's all about skin. Yeah, by the way.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh.
in this booklet. Yeah, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. And we're going to talk about skin a little bit more in depth tomorrow.
Oh, I'll be on. Okay, thank you so much.
And these next questions kind of address almost exactly what you were talking about. So generally speaking, are all essential oils okay to put on open wounds?
No, no. I would not put a lot of things on open wounds. The ones that I would use would be like helichrysum. I mean, you could use lavender, like I'd use lavender more on burns, but open wounds, I usually do like helichrysum or something like tea tree. Bay laurel would also be okay, but helichrysum and tea tree are my two go-to things for an open wound. Yeah.
Is helichrysum to be used neat or in a carrier?
For an open wound?
Yeah, go ahead. Just go ahead, Sue.
Hey, Cindy.
Okay, yes, for an open wound.
Yeah, for open wound, just neat. Like the carrier actually might cause, I don't want to say like infection, but it might not keep the wound as clean. Just put it like neat and then bandage it up. And a lot of times what I do, like when you have the wound, is put helichrysum on the site and then put helichrysum on the bandage and then bind it.
Okay, thanks. And
I mean,
you were
a lot of times, like if it's a really like jagged wound, you put helichrysum on it, you can literally start to see the wound closing a little bit.
Thank you.
Do you put the oil on the wound or around it?
On it, on and around, but yeah. But helichrysum or tea tree. Tea tree doesn't quite have the binding effect and doesn't reduce the inflammation like helichrysum does, but helichrysum will clean it up and reduce the inflammation and start to bind the wound. Yeah. Another one that actually works for wounds, now that I'm thinking this out, myrrh. Myrrh can work really good for a wound.
Do you recommend arnica for bruising?
Yeah, arnica is good. There's not really an essential oil, but there's a CO2. A lot of arnica, what people use is homeopathic, and it's good. I prefer using the plant rather than the homeopathic version. And so I usually keep like a tincture of arnica, but I find that the helichrysum works as good, if not sometimes even better, because the thing with arnica is you really don't want to put it on an open wound site, where helichrysum can go on an open wound site. And so I tend to go helichrysum before I go arnica. You know, I used to make like a trauma ointment that had an arnica infused like base oil, like it was sesame oil with arnica in it. And then I added a bunch of helichrysum and calendula to the mix, and good for just like skin irritations and injuries and things. And it's good, but I started finding like if I just put helichrysum on neat, I was as happy, if not a little bit happier than that whole ointment. And so I stopped making the ointment. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the top of page 25, number 5, which is nociceptive pain. Nociceptive pain. So nociceptive pain is basically the most common form of pain. It is basically dull, achy pain. It can have, like, if you go through and you touch the body, there will be either like a spot that's really hot or really cold. There can be torsions in the body. It can also be like an exposure to some sort of chemical or you know, an irritant of some sort. Here you can see there's like visceral issues, just meaning like down in the gut, like there could be torsions, body misalignments, a twisting of some sort. This would actually cause nociceptive pain. Deep pain, deep somatic pain, like achiness in and around the bones, that's still considered nociceptive pain. Superficial somatic pain is just things that is just closer to the surface, right? And so basically what you have here is, we'll talk about like the single oils and the blend, but let's talk about the mechanisms. So when you have something like this, you basically have stagnant lymph, right? Your body is not detoxifying in this area. When the body doesn't detoxify, you have a couple things starting to happen. For one, muscles don't contract and relax like they should, right? They kind of get into a little bit of a contracted state and they don't quite have the range of motion like they should. So a lot of times if you improve lymphatic function, you also increase flexibility in a particular area, especially in an injured state, right? So that's one. So two, whenever the lymphatic system, again, it's your body's ability to detoxify and do cleanup of the debris in the area, it overactivates the sensory nerves in the area. And so what happens is your sensory nerves start firing from, you know, 5 times a second to 40 times a second. So that means that piece of pain stimuli goes to the brain, you know, 5-10 times faster and stronger than before. So your body is starting to register like, hey, we have a problem, right? And so there's a few things that you want to do. So for one, you want to stimulate lymphatic movement while reducing pain. And one of the best oils for going through and doing this, you have a couple of choices, right? Any of the birches, like birch tar, regular birch, super good for this particular component. Things like ginger and frankincense can be helpful, but birch and birch tar are lymphatic stimulants and they're pain relievers at the same time. The other one to think about as an individual oil is lemongrass. Lemongrass can be very good for this as well. You can put lemongrass in like alcohol or witch hazel and shake it up and then rub it over, like say you have a back issue and you put it on there and it just takes the achiness out of the area quite quickly. So the pain relief blend, you know, it's just normal pain relief with nothing after it. You know, because there's several types of pain relief. So the pain relief blend is basically a pain reliever / lymphatic stimulant. Like it helps move the lymph. Other things like you could use like lymphatic blend, you could use chocolate root cleanser, you could use viscosity. All of these have a lymphatic component, but the pain relief blend has a bunch of birch and birch tar in it that is very good for helping to detoxify the area while helping to release the pain and calming down the sensory nerves. And so by going through and doing this, your body tends to heal at a much faster rate. Like you're able to get your range of motion back, you're able to start breathing better, you're able to start moving around better. You can always follow this up with some sort of antispasmodic. A lot of times I just follow this up with like marjoram or like Petitgran. You know, the thing with using pepper or something like that, it increases circulation, increases blood flow. It thins down the lymph, which makes it move easier. And pepper is also antispasmodic. And so pepper is a good choice in this arena. And so usually with those, that can be quite substantial. Usually a byproduct of long-term sprain or strain, but having that area be toxic like that is really a precursor to an arthritic condition, because your body doesn't have the range of motion in the muscles themselves. And what starts to happen is it starts to affect the joints. Like, so if I take my finger and I compress my finger right here, so below this first joint, and I compress it and I hold it like this, right? So what starts to happen within 2 hours, of this compression like this joint above becomes pre-arthritic, right? So the thing with your joints is you have cartilage that's in your joints, and the cartilage does not have its own blood supply, right? So it's dependent on blood in and around the area to keep it hydrated, to keep it lubricated so that it stays moist and doesn't break down. The more that the cartilage breaks down, the more that it actually starts to produce a pre-arthritic condition. And so if this is pinched off, if there's spasms in and around a joint, what happens is over a period of time, it doesn't allow blood to get into the area, and it doesn't allow blood to leave the area. It doesn't allow lymph to move through the area, so that area is not able to detoxify. So over a period of time, that joint actually becomes pre-arthritic because of the deposits that end up in the joint, and the spasms don't allow blood to move in and out of that area. So whenever you're trying to treat a pain syndrome in a particular area, you want to always loosen up the muscle in and around that joint to help ensure proper blood flow to the area. So you could have something that's not even starting out as an injury. Somebody goes, well, you have back issues. Have you hurt your back? Did you do something to your back? You'll go, you know, no. But say 3 months ago, you were walking down the street and somebody bumped into you and caused like what we would call like a micro trauma, where it's just a little bump, but it didn't like hurt your back or anything, but it threw you back into a little bit of a spasm. And then over a period of time, that spasm reduces blood flow in the joint, it reduces fluid movement in the area. It goes on, it goes on, it goes on. And then pretty soon that joint becomes compromised, and those muscles in and around that area become compromised, and boom, lo and behold, you have an issue. Now, sometimes these things are there because of body misalignments, right? Body misalignments. And so one of the quick ways to start unwinding body misalignments, basically either one of your hips is elevated or rotated, or one of your shoulders is elevated or rotated, or both. Your hip and your shoulder are elevated and rotated. Different patterns do different things, but let's just call it that for right now. So part of that is your hips are below your abdomen, your shoulders are above it. And so your abdomen, your solar plexus area is kind of like a mixing point for the shoulders and the hip girdles. And so there can be a twisting or a torsion in the fascia in the abdominal cavity that can predispose you to an elevated hip or a shoulder or rotations. And so by going through and unwinding the gut can help with unwinding the misalignments. So a lot of times I do something like I put lemongrass on the abdomen in like an alcohol or massage oil, or the blend Digestive Calm. This is literally what it was made for. It was for treating like food sensitivities, food allergies, anxiety because of tension in the gut, but also helping to unwind structural misalignments in the body. And by applying it in the body, your body will actually begin to shift around. Your hips will shift around, your shoulders will shift around, and it makes the nociceptive pain areas much easier to treat because you're taking some of the tension off of those areas. And so you can always augment that also with doing some breathing with the like hyssop or larch. I like hyssop because like in this particular instance, hyssop helps to unwind muscle memory. And so sometimes what happens is your shoulder and your hip have been elevated for 10 years or something, and you're trying to unwind it, and it keeps going back, right? Part of that is your body has muscle memory and it's just going back to what it knows. It goes back to the pattern. When you inhale the hyssop and you put your attention on the different parts of your body, you're basically unwinding the pattern and you're breaking the memory so that the body can reboot in that particular area. Another one that helps the body to shift and change a little bit is Palo Santo. Palo Santo can be incredibly good for helping the body shift and change. It's good for cleaning up the solar plexus. It's good for lower emotions, good for anxiety. It can take some of the tension out of the gut, but it definitely helps the body to shift and change, right? So let's do some questions about nociceptive pain, which is basically dull, achy pain. We're going to go to other kinds of pain, but let's do nociceptive pain first. Let's kind of keep them in their categories just so they don't get confusing. Any sort of questions?
You can unmute yourself, or you can
Unmute, type in, and if you're not sure, ask and we can figure out what kind of pain it is.
Yeah, go ahead, Letty.
Hey, Letty.
Hi, guys. Greg, okay, so like my shoulder blades and upper neck are usually like in pain, but I'm not sure if could it be a combination of both, like
Yeah.
dull,
Could be.
achy and
And sharp. Yeah, it could be. Because you'd have two different things. So like we're going to talk about sharp pain next. And that is some sort of nerve involvement. Like the nerve is being compromised. So a lot of times it's either entrapped coming out of the spine or excuse me, there's an impingement coming out of the spine, or soft tissue has compressed it somewhere where it's compromised, and there's sharp stabbing pain, radiating pain, tingling, things like that. And so with that, it's a bit of a different treatment, but that can also produce nociceptive pain, which is again muscle strain, sprain, stagnant lymph, poor blood supply, all those kinds of things, overactivated sensory nerves, those kinds of things. So it can be, so it can have like layers of something. And here's the thing with pain, especially with like the sharper the pain is, you can have like 4 or 5 spots that are in pain, but your primary spot is the thing that you feel. And so then as you go through and you unwind the primary spot, all of a sudden you'll go, now it's bouncing around. Now I feel it in 3 or 4 other spots. Those spots were always there. They were always sending stimuli to the brain, but your body was being overwhelmed by the primary spot. And so it didn't sense what was happening. When you unwind the primary spot, all of a sudden you'll feel the secondary and the third and the fourth level pain issues that were always there, but your body just couldn't perceive it, because it's like if your shoulder hurts and somebody stomps on your foot, you don't feel the shoulder, you feel the foot for a little while. And then when the foot gets better, you go, yeah, now my shoulder hurts again, right? It was always hurting. It's just that you forgot about it because the foot hurt, right? So same idea. And so sometimes what happens is like the nerve pain might go down. And so you become aware of more of the achiness in other places.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Because like of course I do the oils and then try to do some, pranic healing as well, and then some acupuncture.
Right.
But it kind of like moved, the pain did move
Right.
more like now,
Yeah.
like on
Which
my,
means usually it's getting better, right?
Yes.
That usually means it's getting better, but it doesn't feel that way from the inside out. Like it just feels like, oh, really, another spot. But it's like any time that the pain is changing and shifting, it's usually because it's improving.
Okay, well, I wanted to run something by you.
Sure,
I was
fire away.
kind of looking at different videos to see like different exercises on like stretching all these muscles right in my back. And I came across a YouTube video of this doctor. His name's Dr. Berg. He has a bunch of followers, but he's been in practice for 30 years, but I think now he just does YouTube. But anyway, he talked about like people that have upper like shoulder pain.
Uh-huh.
He mainly talks a lot about the right side, right? And he says that according to him is that he associates like pain like up at the top right shoulder to the gallbladder, and then he associates pain to the scapula or like rhomboid area to the gallbladder. So sorry, to the liver. And according to him, he says if you do some like manipulation on those where you kind of just press what is it called, acupressure,
Mhm.
and you push down on like the gallbladder and the liver, according to him, that you'll feel like a release like right away. But of course my problem is not the right side, it's more the left.
Yeah.
And then he says, well, if it's the left, he goes then you got to do it on the pancreas. And I mean, when you press down on it, like on the areas, like you kind of have to go underneath your rib, underneath your
Mhm.
rib, and you hit like 3 spots. He kind of shows you like the areas, but he associates that to some nerve that runs in front that's called the phrenic nerve.
Mhm.
I mean, what do you think about that? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's an approach. I usually don't talk about stuff like that, or haven't gone down the rabbit hole of that too much, because it can get kind of complicated. And my background was we did dabble with Chinese medicine, but I had more of an osteopathic approach. And so I look at things a lot of times with just like anatomy, physiology, body alignment, You know, the thing with, if we mix in what they're talking about, like you could almost say any pain pattern or pain syndrome involves the liver. Like you very easily could say that. A lot of times in old school medical aromatherapy, they would go through and treat the liver regardless of the pain pattern and try to reduce it regardless of where it's at in the body. And if you look at some of the oils that are good for treating liver issues, one in particular would be helichrysum. And so you start using helichrysum on the body, things like that. It naturally would reduce the pain because of the anti-inflammatory component to it and how it's supporting the liver. So on one level, I would say, you know, yes with that. Then we go to the pancreas and you start looking at the impact of how it has on digestive enzymes and things like this. And so anytime you elevate digestive enzymes in the body, you're basically increasing an anti-inflammatory response. And so, you know, like when we used to treat people with whiplash, one of the things that we would do is we would use digestive enzymes in between their meals. Like usually when you're using enzymes for digesting your food, you take the enzyme with your meal. But when you take them in between your meals, you're using it more for the anti-inflammatory effect that it has on the body. Basically, you're using it like a natural form of ibuprofen, right? And so the other way of doing that would be to stimulate the pancreas. And so I mean, it's a valid, like what he's saying is a valid approach. He's following the meridians. Again, I think that's also a valid approach. It's not the approach that I usually use, but I see value in it. And so if it's bringing you relief, I'd say do it. And if not, I always go back to the osteopathic thing. It's just the thing that makes the most sense to my brain.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So like, tell me a little bit of what's going on with the neck and shoulders though.
It's just more on the left side. It was, well, here, it was like around the rhomboid area, like the scapula.
Right.
And then it kind of shifted up to like now the upper shoulder, but
like up here or?
Yeah, well, up in the, like on the back, top, but on the
Okay.
back. Yeah.
Okay.
But of course I always associate this to a lot of typing, you know, or being on the computer a lot, you know?
Yeah.
And like when I was working on the notes, like I worked for like quite a bit of hours on the booklet. So I feel like when I'm like on the computer for long periods of times, I noticed that the pain around the scapula area or rhomboid area comes back.
And are your shoulders like rounded a little bit?
Probably, yeah, because I sit a lot on the laptop.
Okay.
I mean, I know I'm
because
off
you're
right
used to doing this a little bit.
Yes.
So this is what I would say. Like treating the site is good, but like with something like that, sometimes what happens is it's not that they're contracted, it's that there's a tension in them, but it's because they are stretched. And if the shoulders are rolled forward a little bit, it's stretching out those muscles on the backside. And even though you are able to bring some relief to them, they still will go back because it's like they've been stretched too far, right? So one of the ways to go through and do that is to put things that are antispasmodic on the chest, and especially like up here in the front. You could use marjoram, you could use pepper. I might even use like vetiver and spikenard on the chest, and just to relax the chest muscles, but like up high by the collarbone, and then in the little crease between the shoulder and the chest. And like there's this muscle called the pectoralis minor. It's like your chest muscle here is pectoralis major, but there's this little tiny muscle that comes from the top of the shoulder here and comes down and then attaches. And when it's tight, it really rolls the shoulders forward. And so what I would do is I would put things on it that were antispasmodic. And then like, I'm going to do a stretch. So like we need to move the camera. Okay, so you're going to raise your hand up like if you were to raise your hand in class, right? So my arm is not like at a 90-degree angle. It's like a little bit higher, like you can see like that. And my wrist is at my head. And then I start to, my elbow stays the same, but I start to rotate my wrist backwards. And you'll feel it in the shoulder blade, but you'll feel it like right in here.
Okay.
And then as you're doing it, inhale like hyssop or like spikenard or vetiver. And if you're feeling like you're not getting a good stretch, bring your arm a little bit closer to your head and then rotate it. So you'll feel this on the back side and you'll feel it on the front side.
Okay.
And I'd keep changing position so that you kind of keep getting that stretch.
Mhm.
Like the lower this is like to 90 degrees, the more you're going to feel it on the front. That my experience. And the more that you bring the upper arm towards the head, you feel it more on the back side.
Okay.
But like you can, and the key is to rotate the wrist backwards while keeping the elbow in the same position. And then as you do it, again, really gentle, but you keep inhaling as you're doing it.
Okay.
Like let's have everybody do it real quick. Like pull out something that's relaxing, even if it's lavender or vetiver or hyssop, marjoram, basil, petitgrain. Pull out something that you have, helichrysum. Check your neck, check your shoulders. I love talking about all this clinical stuff. I haven't got to talk about this stuff in ages. I love this stuff. This is what me and my friends used to do all the time, by the way. Sit around, talk about these things. Okay, so then raise your hand up. You're raising it up at about a 45-degree angle here. And then just start to rotate the wrist back, just gently. And then as you do it, inhale while you're breathing into that area. And you can keep.
Right, when I'm doing that, I feel a sharp pain on the opposite side, like down the, down more like on the lower back. When I'm like this,
on the other shoulder?
on the other side, but down towards the lower.
That's a body misalignment. Okay. Still do this, but we'll have you put the digestive calm on the gut.
Okay, I did put some lemongrass on the gut. I did just a while ago.
So you're moving the upper arm towards the head more, and again, you're still just rotating it back. So make sure that this is at like about a 45-degree angle. Moving it more and then rotating it. And then start moving it down to where it's almost coming to like a 90-degree angle and then rotate it. Raise it up higher, rotate it. You're just constantly trying to rotate the wrist backwards and keep inhaling. Okay, let the arm relax. Just let it just sit and be still for a moment. It lowered that shoulder is
Okay.
lower than the other one now.
Okay.
Okay, now let's do the other side. So your arm's up at like a 45-degree angle. You start rotating it back. You're inhaling, start moving it more towards your head, still rotating it back. And then start bringing the arm down, still rotating it back. Okay, so now, if you have an oil that's okay on your skin, take a couple drops and put it on your nostril. Okay, now, like, watch me for a second. So I'm going to take my hands and I'm going to go like this, right? And then I'm going to start making my elbows come together. Like, so it looks like this. You can make your elbows go out a little bit further, but basically you're starting to stretch some of the backside. So first the hands together and then bring the elbows together.
And lift them or don't worry.
You can move them away from the body. You can bring them closer, like find areas where it feels like it's stretching, but your hands are, this hand is usually always kind of in the upright position. You're basically moving your elbows either out or in. And then let it relax. And then inhale the oil a little bit more. Just let your body get a little bit of an equilibrium there a little bit. And then take one hand and grab the elbow and just like stretch it across like this. You know, you're trying to push it as far as you can and then rotate it. And then go back to your hand up and then starting to rotate it backwards. Moving your elbow or your upper arm up closer to your head, still rotating it back. And notice how much that's starting to change already. And then lower it down to where it's almost 90-degree angle. And then switch to the other side. And then bring your arms down, let them rest for a minute. Again, hands together, touch your elbows. And then just move your elbow back and forth and just find positions that feel like it's stretching. Okay, let it all go for a second. And then just do the side, like stretch, side stretch. Okay, so I'm gonna show you one more thing. Okay, so find the little notch like where you're in between the two collarbones, right? Okay, so now just go off a little bit to the side, just like one finger or two fingers off. You can feel there's like a little muscle tendon thing that's right there, right? So bring your head forward and kind of hook your fingers in a little bit under, like around the collarbone. You're kind of poking into that little tendon thing. You're just doing one side at a time. Okay, you kind of feel that. Now gently raise your head up. You can feel it stretching. And bring it back down. Kind of find inside that collarbone, hook around the collarbone a little bit. Same side, and then you go into the other side. So you're going, there's a notch, you're going off to the side, just like a finger or two, where you feel that little tendon moving back and forth. And then kind of push in and try to hook around the collarbone a little bit. With your head down and then raise up. You should feel like a little bit of a stretch or burning sensation up here. And then back down. And by going through and doing this, you're allowing your head to sit in a different position. So it takes some of the pressure off that upper back. And then again. Okay.
I don't think I got that one. I wasn't feeling anything with my nail.
Oh, your nails digging in. You might have to use your pads instead of your nails. If your nails are too long, you might have to like kind of use the pads of your fingers rather than your nails. You could use your thumb as well. And then like move your head around, move your shoulders around. Did that help your upper shoulders, your upper back a little bit?
Yes, Greg, I could tell like it loosened up.
I think you might have a little bit more of a pectoralis minor issue rather than the backside. The backside's like overstretched, but it's because things have rolled in. And so by going through and unwinding this the way that we did, you know, that last piece being, it allows your head to kind of shift and go a little bit further back. It again changes how the posture is for the shoulders. You don't always feel it immediately, but you'll start to notice that like you're finding a little bit different center of gravity, and it becomes less irritating to those areas. And so it's like a little 5-minute stretch that you could do after you've been on the computer for a long period of time or at a desk, and then you can unwind the effects.
Thank you so much, Greg.
You're so welcome. You know, let's maybe just take a 10-15 minute break, and then we'll still come back and talk about nerve pain, which is the second most common type of pain, and usually what people complain about, sharp stabbing pain. So let's come back at 1/4 and we'll go from there. Hey everybody, let's come on back. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about several different things. One is going to be skin, hair, things like that. Another one will be some psychological healing, but real general, real just straightforward approach. Also immunity. We'll be talking about immunity again tomorrow. You know, one of the things, like as we were going through and doing the stretching, is it okay if I share? Yeah, so as we were going through and stretching, Samantha had some like emotional things come up. And so that is one of the things when you go, when especially like movements and postures that you're doing that are involved in pain syndromes and injuries. And that is actually what originally the Gilead blend was made for, way, way, way back in the day. And so she had some emotions coming up, and she wasn't quite crying, but she was like starting to have some emotions and not feeling good. And it was like, I don't know about some of the things we've done today, like, you know, because there were some good things and then there were things that stirred up some emotions. I had her start breathing the Gilead, and not even a pattern, just inhaling it. And within probably 10 inhalations, she was like, I already feel way better, like way, way, way better. And so, you know, we have to take into account that when we have these pain patterns, these pain syndromes in our body, they generate lower emotions. And regardless of why they're there, it's not based on your psyche or your emotions or your thought processes, but it's your body, your physiology is generating like lower emotions. And so sometimes when you're going through and you're unwinding the neck, and we did a little bit on the shoulder, and you know, you go around and you start moving things around like that, it can bring up lower emotions. And they're usually non-specific. They're not about a story. If you try to resolve them, a lot of times there's not even, you know, you can say like, oh, it's about this or about that. But even if you go through and process that situation, it still doesn't change it. It's just lower emotions locked in the body. Like if you're in pain, your body generates the lower emotional response of hurt feelings. If there's like arthritic conditions, your body generates a lower emotional response of resentment. Like it's just, they're mechanically there. They're not based on your psyche. They're based on physiology. And so if you know they're there, you just go through and clean them out. Like it's not something you have to live with or think about or process some situation. It is literally, you just flush it out just like you're flushing out the inflammation. I mean, it's literally that simple. And so if in doubt, you always kind of follow up with like Gilead or Palo Santo. Sometimes frankincense will work, but Gilead or Palo Santo are usually the go-to ones. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up in case you had something coming up or you're working with a client that's bringing something up. Anytime there's a physical injury or anything like that, where there's pain, there's usually some sort of lower emotion associated with it. So before we move on to nerve pain, let's still open up to questions so that anything goes. You can talk about digestion, you can talk about endocrine function, you can talk about acute injury, nociceptive pain, anything that we've discussed so far. Let's open it up to a little Q&A.
Go ahead, Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, Greg. I've had, I've got bone on bone with knee, and I've had a wide variety of things that, and I think it's multiple different levels of pain, different types of pain.
Sure.
And because, if I favor one side, then I screw up something different or
Yes.
whatever.
Been there.
And, so I want to kind of just go through, you really, the lemongrass on the abdomen, you thought,
Yes.
and then an anti-spasmodic, like in an ointment, or would you just put it neat around the knee?
Yeah, so okay, so like when you have like a bone on bone situation, we were going to talk about nerve pain, but let's just jump to degenerative pain. Like a little bit straightforward there. And so you have a couple of different things that are potential issues there. So one, like when you have degenerative pain in a joint, it usually means that a couple of things. One, the cartilage has thinned, or like in your case, there's no cartilage, and now bone and bone are rubbing together. So you have inflammation, and anytime you have a degenerative joint, there is spasms and compromised blood supply to the area. Then you also have, because of the inflammatory material, you have some lymphatic stagnation, and you also have inflammation. You know, one of the things with a degenerative joint is the joint capsule, like this, like little like membrane kind of, let's just call it a capsule, can get very inflamed, right? So this can also aggravate the pain in the joint. It can cause inflammation. It can cause fluid retention. It can cause a lot of different issues. So there's like a few different things that we like to treat when it comes to a joint that has degenerated. So if you look at the top of page 26, number 7 is degenerative pain. And there's a few things listed here. And I'm going to tell you some single oils that you could use as well, in case you don't have those blends and you want to start treating immediately. But let's break it down to the 3 aspects or 3 components that we can go through and treat. And you know, with the information that we're providing here, I'm trying to do like a very simplified form of treatment without having to do like, okay, there's 3 or 4 different layers that you do, and there's this and there's that, and there's rotational approaches. I wanted to provide like really simplified things where you could just look something up and go, oh, let's go to that and treat this. But here, let's talk about it a little bit more in depth. So basically, we are going to do another round of a class like this where we go through and we do more involved treatments. And so degenerative pain would be one of those that I would throw in that realm. So first off, you have the blend joint pain, but you could use rosemary. I tend to use rosemary, cedar, and either like pine or juniper, something like that. You could just stick with those 3. The blend joint relief is more complex than that, but still, when you hit those 3, you're doing a couple of things. So for one, the rosemary is stimulating blood to that joint, and then rosemary also moves blood to the head, right? So one of the issues with degenerative joints is that blood gets into the area and then stagnates. And so you don't get a lot of fresh blood in the area. So even though there might be blood, a lot of times it's old blood that over a period of time actually becomes a little bit toxic. Like it's not getting the oxygen in there, it's not getting the nutrients in there that it needs to, and it's not picking up the debris and leaving with the debris, right? So you're wanting to increase blood flow and circulation to the joint, and then have it start moving towards the heart or towards the head. Rosemary literally does that. Like, it's antispasmodic. It moves blood to an area and it moves blood towards the head, which means it's also moving it towards the heart. Okay, so you're increasing blood supply, you're decreasing some spasms, and you're getting the blood to hydrate the area. You don't have cartilage that you're trying to save there, but if, say, there was like a thin layer of cartilage, increasing the blood supply would actually buy time for that cartilage, because it, like, basically what breaks it down is like poor blood supply, like lack of blood. And you know, it's also wear and tear on pressure and joints. I mean, your knees, your hips, and your spine all can develop what you call osteoarthritis, which is just the cartilage in those joints break down because they're weight-bearing joints. And so it might be lack of circulation, and it could be misalignments. It could be, you know, say you're a runner or something like that, so you put a lot of wear and tear on the hips and knees. It could be all kinds of things, right? So by going through and treating that, you're getting fresh blood to the area, you're keeping the tendon, the sheath, the synovial fluid, and the synovial sacs all relatively healthy, while decreasing the spasms. And remember, the thing with here, any sort of pressure in and around the joint actually makes that joint more arthritic or pre-arthritic. Then from there, you're wanting to deal with deposits, right? So this is starting to be crystalline deposits in the area, and the body sometimes, to protect a joint, will start to deposit calcium in the area. and start like this little like spurring to basically inhibit the movement of that joint. So it digs into the soft tissue so that you don't move the joint as much, and it keeps you from injuring that joint. So it's a natural defense mechanism built into the body. But if you move the body with the spurring, it actually aggravates it. All forms of pain come from the soft tissue. You know, it doesn't come from the bone. It's not the cartilage. It's actually the tissue in and around the joint that is relaying the pain. And so if you have a lot of deposits, it just starts to grind on the joint and cause some issues. And so we want to flush out any of those deposits to the best of your ability. So the ArthroCare blend is literally made for deposits in the joints. And if you don't have that, like forms of eucalyptus are helpful, but Eucalyptus citrodora is the best. Like it works really well for that. The one that really shines is lovage. Lovage is just the bomb when it comes to deposits in the joint. And so, you know, you can use things that are pain relieving as well, like birch and wintergreen. Those can also be helpful. But the lovage and the Eucalyptus citrodora are really super good for reducing the deposits in the joint and flushing them out. You know, for the deposits to be there, they kind of develop like this little like covering on them. And if you can break that up, the body will flush those things out of the joint. If there's calcium deposits where it's actually a spur on the joint, it does still kind of help to loosen up the tissue in and around the spur so that with movement, it's not as aggravating to the joint. And so then you have a choice. You can use black cumin internally to reduce inflammation, or you can start using some of the oils that are blue, like German chamomile, yarrow, even dark blue tansy or regular blue tansy, Cape chamomile. You know, there's also blends. There's Inflamin, there's the Blue Healer, and then there's the pain relief for inflammation, and I think it's called inflammatory. All of those have a lot of the dark blue oils, which the dark blue component chemically is azulene in the oil that is very strong anti-inflammatory. And the thing with inflammation in the joint, especially you see this a lot in the knees, is there starts to be like fluid retention in and around the knees. And the fluid retention needs to be dispersed. Like when there's a lot of inflammation in the area, it can kind of create its own blood supply and change some of the physiology in the joint. And so you really want to flush that out as much as possible. German chamomile is really good for reducing inflammation, but it's incredibly good for dispersing that fluid retention that's in and around the joint. And it helps to clean up the metabolic, like leftover debris that can be like within that joint because of poor circulation, of the deposits, of the movement or lack of movement. Anything of that nature, it helps to flush all those things.
Internally or externally?
No, topically. You would all of these you would just do topical. You would rub them all. The only one that you would do internally would be the black cumin. But other than that, everything is topical on site, you know. And a lot of times what you can do is you can rotate them. Like, you know, you can put one on in the morning, and then in the afternoon and the evening, you put another one. And then maybe at bedtime, you put another one, and you just kind of keep rotating them throughout the day. And a lot of times you'll find pretty substantial relief. You know, you might find that one works better than the other, and you just go deeper on that one. If it's inflammation, it's usually the German chamomile or like the Blue Healer or whatever you're using. If everything's pretty straightforward, then usually the tendency is for the joint relief to be the thing that brings a lot of relief, you know, because it's increasing so much blood flow to the area. And so if you do this on a regular basis, you know, you'll keep up movement, you'll keep up flexibility. Every once in a while, you need to maybe augment with some lymphatic work in the area. And if you do something like that, the chakra root cleanser is actually probably your best bet. It's a deep lymphatic stimulant, and it has a lot of kunzia in it. And the kunzia actually helps to increase flexibility and range of motion in arthritic conditions. Like, I mean, it's literally made, I mean, it literally is recognized by the Australian equivalent of the FDA to increase ranges of motion in arthritic conditions and the use of and treatment of eczema. And so, you know, they have like a little bit of a different approach to like what our FDA is. You can use anecdotal information from physicians to say that something is good for something. And so Australia, it is recognized to increase the flexibility in that. And so here in the US, there's a couple of physical therapists that I have that use it, but one in particular, she went through and did the machines where they test range of motion, and then they put the chakra root cleanser on afterwards. And she said it was about a 20% increase, like 18 to 20%, if I remember right, when she put the chakra root cleanser on and then went back and retested. And so that's pretty substantial. And so if you're having range of motion issues, work in the chakra root cleanser in the mix there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I also get on, you know, underneath my knee, on the sides and in the back, you know, where muscles are inserting and different things, you know, I get those inflamed because of, you know, just
do the blue healer, like the blue healer or the German chamomile. That will, I mean, it's not going to fix anything. I mean, because the issue is you're bone on bone. And so the thing is you try to keep down inflammation, keep blood going to the area, and then keep it as flushed out as possible lymphatically. And a lot of times you can buy a lot of time that way.
and he gave me injections of PRP and
Right.
stuff.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
how are pain levels these days?
I am, you know, that time that I was there that I couldn't get up and down the
Right.
stairs easily. I mean, I am 100% better than that.
Okay, good.
I still have pain, but I'm like trying to bike every day, and I'm trying to do my stretches and stuff, and it's really helped. I still have problems.
Yeah.
But
And so
but I
remember,
can-
you can always augment also with a little bit of galbanum for the pain response. You know, it reduces the stress on the body from the pain, and it does impact the pain threshold. And so you could just put several drops of it on your wrist. You know, especially with exercise and everything, it can kind of help you exercise and not get it as aggravated. You know, there's a weird thing that happens, like when the body's in pain, there's a weird tension that happens in the body, and it's actually tied to limbic responses. And the galbanum actually helps to knock down that weird tension, and it doesn't quite have the sensory impact on the brain. Like your brain doesn't get as much of the pain stimuli as you would if you weren't on it. And so that's always kind of a go-to thing if there's any sort of pain syndrome.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Yeah. And so with that, does anybody have questions about arthritic conditions or degenerative conditions? Let's open that up.
Okay, because I don't know, but Deborah, your hand was raised next.
Yeah, sure.
and then Leslie.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine was about something different, so I'll wait. Thank you.
What's it about? Go ahead and fire away.
So it seems like there's some just like magical kinds of oils that we have here. And I say magical because they do so many wonderful things.
Mhm.
And so you will be talking about like the Palo Santo using it for clearing emotion, and then Palo Santo for something else that we're doing. And what I was curious about is when you're focused on using, say, one of the oils for something very physical, but you also have these underlying emotions that need to be released and cleared and all those other things we do through your protocols. Is that being handled without you directly?
Yeah.
Is some of that happening anyway because you're using that
Yes.
oil?
So that's actually a great question. So I mean, Palo Santo is a perfect example of this. Like, so it helps the body in a lot of different ways. You know, it helps relieve tension, helps the body go through shifts and changes, can clear out the lower emotions, can actually even help to reduce some of the pain because of the energetic effect of, like, you know, breaking up the old dirty stagnant energy and helping fresh energy go into an area. And so, like, say you put it in and around an area, or you put it on the joints and then on the solar plexus, but you're treating your knee, it would hit a lot of different components without having to direct it like we would in protocols on classes in the weekend. You know, the thing is, with, like, when we're going through and we're doing the classes on the weekend, that's pretty advanced work. Like, that is really super specific, and we're addressing issues, and we're re-educating something, or we're unwinding something. You know, we're usually doing something that we're actively trying to cultivate. But here, you know, this is why I wanted to do this class this weekend. And we're actually going to do a series of these kind of, I don't want to call them clinical, but just like real straightforward ways of treating conditions. Is it can not be as complicated as some of the classes that we do on the weekend, where, you know, here we're talking about pain. You put it on, it takes some of the tension out of the body, it reduces some of the emotion, it cleans up things energetically, it helps the body go through the stress part. You don't have to direct any of it. You just got to put it on the body or inhale it. And you know, one oil, Palo Santo, and one oil that I keep forgetting to write down is that's in the same vein of that, is the coffee oil. And coffee would do the same thing. And the coffee, to a certain extent, is actually a little bit of a better lymphatic stimulant. But it's like, I remember the first batch of the coffee oil that I got. You know, there's people that had coffee oils, but I was never that impressed with them. Like, I'd get them, they were kind of expensive, and they really didn't do a whole lot. You know, they smelled kind of like coffee. But when I found this CO2, you know, I got a sample and I liked it, and then I ordered several kilos of it, and I got it. And you know, I didn't even put it in massage oil. I just didn't need, and I was like, I'm gonna see what this feels like on my feet. And then I put it on my feet, and I was like, oh, my feet feel so good. But now, like, my hips and knees hurt. Like, and they didn't hurt before, but because my feet felt so much better, now all of a sudden my feet hurt, or my knees hurt. So then I rubbed it on my knees and my hips. And then I was like, now my back hurts and my shoulder hurts. And then before I knew it, I was like rubbing coffee just like all over my body. And coffee, by its nature, is not a pain reliever. You know, it's not. It's a lymphatic stimulant, and it's very good for moving lymph. And so it started to detoxify me so much that the body started feeling significantly better because of, one, flushing out the lower vibrational energy, and two, it was stimulating lymphatic movement. And the byproduct of it was it actually reduced pain levels in my body because of the lymphatic movement. It was starting to reduce the amount that the sensory nerves were firing. It just started this like chain reaction. Just like the pain syndromes actually cause a negative chain reaction, this caused a positive chain reaction. And so a lot of times with these oils, by putting them on the body or just inhaling them, like a perfect example on the break, you know, the stretching brought up some emotions for Samantha. I had her inhale the Gilead and she said, what pattern? I was like, just inhale it. Like, that's all you gotta do, just inhale it. And within 10 breaths, she was like, I feel significantly better. She didn't direct it to her heart. She didn't direct it to her solar plexus. She didn't put it on her arms and legs. She didn't even put it on her body. She was just opened up a bottle, started inhaling, and boom, she felt better. And so a lot of times when we're doing these simplified approaches, a lot of times that's all it takes is like an application, an inhalation, you know, diffusing it in the area, and it will do multiple things without you having to think about it or direct it. And so you know, Palo Santo is a good example. If you just put it on your wrist, it makes you feel a little bit better. It makes you feel better. It makes you feel a little bit less anxious. You put it on your arms and legs, it takes it a little bit deeper. You rub it on your solar plexus and up on your shoulders, like up in this area. And like all of a sudden there's like body tension that's like going away. Like all of a sudden all these things are happening. So sometimes it depends on where you're applying it, but just putting it on the body starts the process. And then if you hit some key spots, it takes it deeper and you don't have to do a thing about it. Like you put it on, you lay down in bed and you crash out, or you go about your day, or you lay on the couch and watch a movie or something, and that's your therapy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does that help? Does that kind of address the thing that you're wanting to address?
Well, you just confirmed what just sort of logically was stacking up for me. So
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, good.
And then go ahead, Luzley.
Hey, Leslie, how are you?
Hi, how are you, Greg? I have a
Good.
question.
Yes, Mary.
I've been diagnosed with arthritis, but
Okay.
I have meniscus tears on both knees.
Okay.
I had surgery on the right knee, the left knee.
So you
trying
still
to-
have a little bit of meniscus left on that knee, or did they take it all out?
They took it out the right knee, but the doctor let me know that there was arthritis there.
But
Now,
is there a little bit of cartilage left? Is there a little bit of meniscus, or is
Yes.
it completely gone? Okay.
there's some left. And then on the left knee, I didn't rush to get surgery. I started going for acupuncture because I actually wanted to treat it because I was afraid to have another surgery on the other knee because I noticed the legs are starting to get weak.
Yeah.
Like legs are starting to feel weak, and I also have arthritis on the hips, and I also have this lymphatic system that's a little bit compromised.
Right.
So I'm wondering, like, what can I do? Because there's times where I can feel inflammation based off on sometimes my diet. I notice.
Okay.
I notice certain movements. Like you said, sometimes things could feel like they're resting, and when you start moving things around and you start like stretching or whatever, it's like my knees automatically start getting really inflamed.
They get inflamed.
And the
Okay.
sides and the back.
And the one that you did not have surgery on, does it ever like lock into place or get real achy, anything like that?
It gets real achy.
Real achy. Okay. And your hips are doing what? You mentioned your hips?
You were talking about hips earlier, about one being higher than the other.
Okay, so just misalignment. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so this is what I would do for your knees. So I'm probably less concerned about deposits on your knees, but I would say like the joint relief, or a combination of like rosemary, cedar, and like Sylvester pine or juniper. Sylvester pine, you know, the thing with going back to what Laura issues are with her knees, and I forgot to mention this, and for you, is Sylvester pine put on the wrist. It stimulates the production of cortisone in the body. And so, especially for arthritic conditions, or like, you know, the body just gets achy, it takes some of that out. Like it takes out the achiness in the joints, and it takes out the achiness. Like sometimes people will say like the body hurts or the skin hurts, but it's usually a little bit deeper than the skin, but it's just some inflammatory material. And the issue is that like when you have a degenerative condition, some of that inflammatory material is in the joint, and some of it starts to hit the body and go to other places. And so sometimes what happens is you get a little bit of that inflammatory material in other parts of your body, and it just makes other parts of your body ache. It's not that there's a problem in that area, but that inflammatory material is up in an area and then it lands in, say, like your hips or your shoulders or something like that. And so you want to kind of flush that out. And again, that joint relief, it has all of that in there. And so it increases circulation to the area and reduces spasms, and it is a little bit of a lymphatic stimulant. So that's good for that. And then I would put you could take black cumin internally, but I'd also do Sylvester pine on the wrist, and just to stimulate the cortisone production in the body. And, because like if you have a joint that's really achy or compromised, that's one of the things the doctor will do is give you a cortisone shot in the area to help heal the body and reduce some of the pain in the area. So you're basically trying to stimulate your body's natural production of cortisone, because it's a natural occurring substance in the body. And then from there, I would rotate it with something that's very anti-inflammatory. So, you're going to put joint relief on at some points in the day, and then something like either German chamomile by itself, or blue healer, or the pain relief inflammatory blend, and several drops in some massage oil, and then rub it all over the knee. And then go a little bit high and a little bit low. Sometimes with knee issues, like with what you're talking about, I'd also be a little bit just watchful of the tension in the hamstring, because anytime you have an inflammatory condition, sometimes the inflammation causes your muscles that extend a joint to lose a little bit of tone, and it throws the things that brings the joint together or flexes the joint, causes them to go into spasm. That's why, like, when you have a fever, going into the fetal position feels good, because you're just flexing the whole body, right? And we tend to be a little bit flexor dominant to begin with. And so, sometimes taking some of the tension out of the hamstring can ease up some of the issue in the knee itself. So with that, you could use marjoram, you could use basil. I really like black pepper on the hamstrings. I think black pepper works really super good. It increases circulation. It helps to move lymph. It thins down the viscosity of the lymph. It releases fascia. So you could use the pepper, or you could use the fascial release blend on the back of the leg, especially the hamstring. And I think that combination actually could bring you a lot of relief and buy you a lot of time with the knees. Like you still have meniscus there. And so if you keep the blood supply really healthy to the knee, that cartilage is not going to break down as fast or not break down at all. And, then you're just managing some symptoms. And so arthritis is usually a thinning of the meniscus, inflamed joint capsule, bursa sacs that are synovial sacs that are irritated and not functioning well, or deposits in the joint. And so if you go through and you kind of treat those, you're really slowing down the degeneration that's happening in the joint.
Yeah, you're on point, because I have bursitis on the hips.
Yeah, bursitis.
And then that's really, really painful when they're inflamed. And as far as the hamstrings, I'm also on physical therapy, and my therapist is also working on the hamstrings with me. We're doing
good.
Stretches on the hamstrings. So I'll definitely get the black pepper, and I'll have her work with me on that. They did offer injections, but I refused them. I didn't want any. And as far as pain medication, I just tolerate it. I just try my best to tolerate it, breathe through it. The acupuncture has been helping, Also on the acupuncturist, they have this like a machine where they do this like massage thing. And that's been kind of helping, you know, somewhat too. But thank you. Thank you very much.
And so like, you know, there's the black cumin, but you know, also from the health food store, there's a company that makes digestive enzymes that are especially good for soft tissue issues or arthritic conditions. And the company's name is Wobezyme, like WOBEZYME. And if you go into the health food store, it's in the section like where the glucosamine and the MSM and all that is. And, you know, they're a little bit expensive. So buy the smallest bottle so you make sure that it works for you rather than buying a big bottle and then have it not working. And take one capsule in between your meals. And it has an anti-inflammatory effect. And so, you know, going back to the thing, like you're saying, you're trying not to take the pain meds and, you know, a lot of times they don't give opioids anymore, but they'll have you take like ibuprofen or Anaprox or something like that.
No, over here in New York, they're like really free with the opiates, but I'm allergic to the opiates. Whenever I take it, I throw up, I get sick, I get palpitations, and I almost go into like, it feels like a hallucinative dream state.
Huh.
When I take any of the opiates, things get really weird for me. So I just avoid them at all.
So, I mean, you could still use the Wobezyme just to reduce inflammation, and I mean, it doesn't work like an opioid, but it still has an anti-inflammatory effect. You can play with that. I mean, like we've given you a bunch to do, and so you know, I don't want to like overwhelm you with all the different things, but like if you do even just like half of it, it usually should bring you a substantial amount of relief.
Okay, thank you.
You're so welcome.
Oh, I was the one who asked the question about when you get a gastric sleeve. I didn't get the gastric bypass. I got a sleeve, but I'm noticing in my nail bed, I'm not absorbing. I feel like I don't absorb nutrients the way that I'm supposed to.
I got to look some things up for that. Like,
okay,
I do have some notes on that somewhere, but it's been a little while since I've treated that, so I have to go back and I don't remember what I did.
Okay, thank you.
You're so welcome.
So I can only see right now, I found one question. They're just asking for massaging the forearm for the trigger points. If you don't have Eucalyptus citrodora, lovage, or Arthur-Care, what's best?
And we're talking about for the trigger fingers?
I think that's what it is.
We don't have any of those. Yeah, deposits. I mean, in a pinch, you could use ironbark eucalyptus, kind of similar to the Eucalyptus citrodora, but those are very specific for removing the deposits and the crystalline deposits. And so there's not a lot of other choices. I mean, if you don't have those, maybe juniper might work somewhat, but usually lovage or Eucalyptus citrodora is like the go-to things. And like the Arthur-Care has those both in there with some other things. I think it has juniper in it as well, but if you don't have those, try juniper or ironbark eucalyptus. And if you don't have those, maybe just try some form of eucalyptus. But you know, the reason to use those is they're very good for removing deposits in the joint, or in the tissue, I should say. Yeah.
That looks like all the questions right now. We have technically 4 minutes.
Yeah. So we just have a couple minutes. So let's talk about nerve pain just real quick. I want to squeeze it in.
Greg, really quick, you have
Yeah.
parsley for the deposits for the trigger finger and the old notes
Okay, parsley.
With,
Yeah, parsley.
yeah,
Parsley could
with the
work.
lower chakra pattern.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just put it on topically on the area. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me. I knew there was something else that was lingering in there. Celery might work. Parsley, celery. Yeah. You know, something like Angelica might work, but Angelica, very, very pricey, and yeah, Cypress might work, but not sure. Yeah.
They said they had those.
Okay. Yeah. That's good. Good. So, nerve pain. So nerve pain is pain that's sharp, stabbing, radiating, prickling, tingling. You know, basically the nerve has been compromised. So a lot of times this is coming out from the vertebrae of the spine, or it can be potentially like cranial nerves. But sharp stabbing pain, the best thing to use is anything that has menthol in it, like so peppermint, spearmint. Corn mint works really well for this. Corn mint has the highest amount of menthol out of all the essential oils. So it's used a lot in when you can get good quality corn mint, it's used in pain blends. The reason you don't see it on the market very much is it gets fractionated to make menthol. And so not a lot of true sources of corn mint are around, but the corn mint we get is actually out of Nepal. It's interesting that some of the pain-oriented oils come out of Nepal, for example, wintergreen and corn mint. And so the menthol blocks the pain sensation going to the brain. But here's the issue with pain is like peppermint and corn mint, they're very anti-inflammatory. They block the pain and they're somewhat antispasmodic. You want to reduce the spasms in and on the spine. So again, basil, petitgrain, marjoram, all very good. Any of the spasmodic blends like antispasmodic, things like that can be very helpful. But when you have issues in soft tissue and when you have issues in the fascia, it puts a lot of stress on the respiratory tract. And so what happens when you have pain that's been there for longer than 14 days is it causes bronchial spasms. So you need to go through and unwind the bronchial spasms, because when you have bronchial spasms, it throws the diaphragm into spasm. And when the diaphragm is tight, it increases the tension in the spinal muscles that go in between the vertebrae and increases the pressure on the spine and aggravates the pain syndrome to a greater or higher degree. So a lot of times when you're dealing with nerve pain, you also have to treat the bronchial spasms as well. So you could use the bronchioles blend, you can use hyssop, you can use larch, you can use myrtle, you can use anula, you can use sitka. Any of these help to unwind the bronchioles and the diaphragm. And then the new one, the pulmonary stress support, also good for that. So you have a lot of different choices of how to go through and treat that. So apply it topically, like say you have low back pain. I mean, I take the pain relief neuropathic or peppermint and put it right on the spot, right on the spot, and then deepen the breath. A lot of times by deepening the breath with nerve pain, the nerve pain will reduce by 40 or 50%, just that by itself. And so by going through and treating that, you're actually treating the pain and then treat the localized spot as well, right? So questions with that, or? We have time tomorrow. I just wanted to squeeze in one little piece, like every minute is something that I wanted to, fill with something, so.
Very nice, thank you.
Okay, we'll just call it good, and tomorrow we'll start at 10 o'clock. I hope you guys are enjoying today. Tomorrow, skin, immunity, and really super basic psychotherapy or psychological healing. You know, things like anger and frustration and resentment, things like that. Really simple, straightforward ways of treating things. Not involved patterns or anything like that, just real simple ways of treating things. So we'll go through and talk about that tomorrow.
Did he say we use basil and marjoram? I'm asking them to clarify for what? For nerve pain.
For reducing spasms in the spine is what that's for.
Thank you.
Not so much the pain, but the spasms along the spine. Yeah. Okay, you guys. Well, thanks for a great day, and we'll be talking about a whole different range of topics tomorrow. And if you have questions from today, write them down and we'll be sure to cover them tomorrow.